Chapter 51, Assassin Legacy. Can you send us to the world that fights zombies? Kenway said. Of course, as a businessman, the customer's opinion is my direction of effort. But can you tell me why you did not choose that ordinary future world and chose this world that may have war? If you don't want to follow me, say it or not, Ryan asked curiously. Kenway smiled and replied, first of all, I learned from the plant you just showed and what you said. You have a connection with a world that fights zombies, and may even have a long-term connection, which means that the world is not so bad. Second, I want to throw away the wanted flowers on the Caribbean island for a long time. I think the future senses of people should be more rigorous so that my daughter and I can hardly get into that world. Plants vs. Zombies world shop owner, you can be my referral and let me blend into that world. Again, you know what I am good at now. What do you think I can do in a peaceful world? In the end, living people will be more terrible than moving dead people. At least in the world fighting zombies, don't worry about the problems of too many living people. After all, that world should have a simpler folk customs. After listening to the reason why Kenway chose Plants vs. Zombies, he nodded with emotion. Do you have anything else to bring? I can give you a few hours to pack up. After all, once you emigrate to another one, if it is the world, it would be difficult to come back. After finishing tidying up and memorizing the name of my groceries shop in my heart, then find any door and push it to come to me. I will be back in an hour, Kenway said. After talking, he called his daughter and left with her hand in hand. Lane watched them walk out the door and began to observe the fruit of his mutant dragon grass. Now that the fruit is beating slowly like a heart, Ryan feels it is likely to grow a new variety plant that he has never seen and belongs to himself. Half an hour later, the fog at the door flashed. Kenway brought her daughter back. He was wearing a leather-style assassin hoodie, fully armed. Behind him seemed to wrap a large bag of things with a tablecloth. Her daughter also carried a small package, and she also held a puppet bear. You move so fast, Ryan said with some surprise, because he didn't expect it. This complete move can be done in half an hour. Actually, because of security issues, I am always ready to take my daughter to transfer. So many things are prepared in advance, just need to pack and go, Kenway replied. After Ryan and Kenway signed a contract on a piece of parchment, the content was that Kenway handed over all the knowledge he knew to Ryan as compensation, and Ryan was responsible for sending their father and daughter to the world of Plants vs. Zombies. After the contract was signed, a blood-red mist wafted from Kenway's head, and then a thick book with a red cover fell on the shelf. The title above was Kenway's Assassin's Creed. After seeing the book, Ryan nodded, and then wrote something to Kenway on a blank letter paper on the table. The leader of Dave's world is also one of my best partners. This is a letter I sent to Dave, about your situation. I hope he can take care of you. I also tell in the letter you can temporarily live in my house. After all, most of the time I will not live in that world. The house is empty and empty. It is better to live for you. Let me say hello to him in the end. Kenway took the letter and nodded, and Ryan opened the space door to the world of Plants vs. Zombies. At the same time, the sound of the system comes out. Send 2 people to other worlds, adult male, tiny extraordinary strength, 15 offset points. Underage women, no extraordinary strength, 5 offset points. Charge for this stuff? Ryan was dumbfounded. After Kenway and his daughter hummed farewell wine, Note 1, through the space door, he was about to check what was going on. The system suddenly heard a new voice, detected a large-scale change in the fate of the guest world. Multiple changes of Children of Fate were detected. The overall situation of the world has changed little. Get 35 offset points. Ryan, whose offset points suddenly changed to 39, felt a burst. It's just that he still has to check and see how the offset points of the teleporter are spent. Otherwise, the inexplicable deduction of points will make him distressed. Spent several minutes, and finally he only found a few articles about the system in the dozens of pages of system instructions. First, the transfer of characters in different worlds requires an offset point to ensure the accuracy and safety of the transfer. The different energy levels of each character determine the transfer of the offset point they need. Second, the premise of teleportation is that the shopkeeper has opened the teleportation door to that world. Thirdly, the shop owner can directly inquire about the energy required for delivery in the grocery store. Ryan, let me know if I knew it. Fourth, credit is not allowed in this shop, so only when the transaction can be confirmed. Reading www.uukanzu.com contract will take effect. It seems that the Wanji grocery store is not bad. At least it will not engage in loan sharking, and it can avoid being white wolves with empty gloves. Holding 39 points of big money, Ryan decided to quickly spend them to improve his strength. After all, what Ryan lacks now is strength. He selected Kenway's Assassin's Creed to prepare for learning, and found that only 3 points were needed to complete all the knowledge. This includes fighting techniques, multiple foreign languages, sailing manipulation, camouflage, the manufacture of various props and so on. Sure enough, things that do not involve extraordinary power are cheap. Is followed by Eagle Eye, a way to develop your sixth sense. Because Lane lacks certain genes in the Kenway world, Lane wants to learn this ability in 2 ways. The first is to change the genes to obtain the same eagle eye ability as Kenway. 5 offset points are required. The second is to use Ryan's own magic to replace the display of certain blood power, but it can only enhance the sensitivity of the sixth sense and other 5 senses, and the effect is far behind the original eagle eye. Of course, the price is cheap, only 3 points. The last item is the leap of faith. No matter how high you jump, you won't get hurt if there is a haystack underneath. To learn this, you need to involve some changes in the laws of the world itself. To learn, you need 300 offset points. Ryan thought for a moment, and chose all the knowledge learning and magic alternative versions of Eagle Eye. After the flower went to the 6 offset point, Ryan sat in a chair and received more than 10 minutes of knowledge installation, and finally mastered these things. After he stood up, he was ready to experience some newly gained power. After all, he watched so many videos in his last life, and Ryan has always envied the handsome action of the protagonist in Assassin's Creed. Note: I highly recommend the ending song Farewell Wine of the Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Chapter 52. Everything is false and everything is allowed. Ryan's strength experiment was in the 1G grocery store, because it saves time. Anyway, no matter how long you stay inside, as long as more than an hour, going out is only an hour. He put his clothes behind and started to try for the first time according to the abilities in his memory. Of course, this time the goal was set very low. The plan was to quickly run to the reception desk and jump up, and then flew to the back shelf, climbing the shelf to the top. To be honest, many Parker people can do this, which is not in the difficult category. But in this world, many things will not be completed according to plan. Ryan made a mistake in the first step. He didn't fit his hands and feet properly, and he didn't jump to the planned height, causing his calf to sway directly on the edge of the reception desk. Then lay down on the ground directly, and hugged the calf with both hands, bent his body like a shrimp, and made a screaming cry. After a while, the pain gradually disappeared. Ryan lifted his trouser legs and found a bruise on his calf. He quickly took out the fresh white from the space bag and wiped it on the wound. Then Ryan started to review that he was suddenly stunned by the power. After all, the previous knowledge acceptance has been repeatedly proved. After mastering the knowledge, it is necessary to practice repeatedly to turn the knowledge into power. How is this possible exception? Not to mention that this inheritance has higher requirements on body strength and the like. Obviously it takes more time. Just when Ryan was frustrated that he could not gain power quickly, the system just popped up a message. It feels that as the time of contact with the system becomes longer and the system becomes more and more humanized, it seems that I and the system work well together. Ryan browsed the new information while thinking. There are a set of ways to infuse power in the grocery store in 1G, but the cost of such infusion is not low. And if you do not want to have sequelae, it is best to adjust the perfusion method according to your own condition as the system prompts. For example, the power inheritance of this assassin, 1G grocery store can help Ryan to improve the physical and muscular memory, physical coordination up to the level of these 5 years of practice. Eagle Eye can be raised to the level of 1 year of practice. As for the data, the information also gives an explanation. The so-called physical strengthening and muscle memory are actually simple physical changes that do not involve extraordinary strength, so the requirements for the strengthened are also low, and Elena's body can withstand 5 years of changes at a time. Hawkeye is different. Practice requires the intervention of extraordinary power. This allows 1G grocery store to infuse Ryan. 1 year level. Faced with such a situation, Ryan chose to instill it immediately because he now desperately needs strength. 5 years of power infusion consumes 1 offset point each year, while the Eagle Eye of 1 year requires 3 points. According to the prompt, Ryan sat on the chair and confirmed the payment of 8 o'clock offset. A beam of light shone down from the ceiling and enveloped Ryan in the beam of light. Ryan felt that there was a change in his body, and his muscles and bones began to heat slowly, accompanied by itching and pain. This feeling lasted not long. When Ryan felt that he could not bear it, the discomfort slowly decreased. Finally, with the disappearance of the light beam, all the uncomfortable feelings on the body also disappeared, and the power infusion ended. After confirming the end of the period, Ryan began to examine his body. I found out my appearance did not change much, but I could feel that the bones are stronger, the muscles are more flexible, and the heart and lung function are also strengthened. Then he continued the experiment just now. This time he easily jumped onto the reception desk, and then climbed lightly to the top of the shelf. It seems that this time the strength has really been improved, at least to reach the level of some ordinary Parker athletes. It's just that these forces still need to continue to exercise, otherwise, they will degenerate. After packing things, Lane chose to leave the 1G grocery store and return to the original place. 5 minutes later, Ryan had walked on Saga Street, Iceland's famous magical commercial street. While eating dried cod with cream, he looked at the surrounding shops. This is a magic commercial street that serves as a transit point between Europe and the United States. International Flyway Network sometimes requires a transit station for long-distance travel, otherwise people can't stand it. Iceland is the cross-ocean International Flyway Network between Europe and America. Transit station. The goods inside come from various regions. Ryan saw that not only sells Nordic specialty products, but also some gadgets from the Americas. He bought a few small stone pendants engraved with Niven, ready to go back as a gift to a few friends. But in addition to the vendors selling these gadgets, there are also all kinds of people here, especially scammers. At least he was walking on this street only half a street, and he had already met several waves of scammers. For example, those who sell mink fur trouts that claim to make men pregnant. If this thing is really effective, Dumbledore had already come for a long time. I don't know where to get the slap Native American totem, claiming that it can defend against vampires and werewolves, and even a Merlin's possession boat. This is the thing that Lane thinks is the most pitted, because the corner of the parchment paper is actually printed with the trademark of Wenanju. But this has little effect on Ryan. From his last life, he knew that it was basically impossible to pick up leaks at such tourist spots. Rather than spend money on it, it is better to go to the old bookstore to find out if there are any old books worth starting. Although the stories of these people are very beautiful, they sound very reasonable. But be aware that if they are all telling the truth, then Merlin will probably have no time to do anything other than dig treasures in his life. In addition to finding a whole set of Distrom's 1st to 5th grade black magic class textbooks in the old bookstore. Yes, Distrom is learning black magic classes, not black magic defense, but just improving the class of textbooks. He also bought several boxes of candies in a candy store full of fairy tales. The gift of a small pendant for a friend is too thin. At least it must be a box. While Ryan was happy while walking, suddenly a figure walked behind and bumped Ryan. Ryan subconsciously touched the bag of space around her waist, and it was gone. The thief. Ryan popped out such a word in his mind. Then he quickly chased towards the place where the man escaped. After all, it's not just the money in the space bag, but also the summer vacation homework that he finally wrote, which is really troublesome if lost. The man seemed to be familiar with this place, squeezed in the crowd trying to get rid of Ryan. Lijian turned on the cottage version of Eagle Eye mode to lock the thief, then climbed down the wall 3 or 2 times to the roof, and quickly ran on the roof to track him. After running for more than 30 meters, the thief turned into a hidden alley next to the commercial street and bent over with his knees to pant. Probably because of previous successful experience, the thief was obviously careless. After seeing no one catching up behind, the thief actually stood there and took out the space bag to check the harvest. Just preparing to open the bag, I haven't had time to see what's inside. He heard a gust of wind from his head, and then passed out by a heavy object falling from the sky. Before fainting, the thief only vaguely heard the sentence, "Everything is false and everything is acceptable." Chapter 53, Mysterious Map. Lijian used the obtained assassin heritage to trace the thief who stole his space bag on the roof. Finally, taking the opportunity of the thief to stop and check the loot, he jumped off the roof of the 2nd floor and smashed the thief. After reading the slogan of A Little Middle 2, Ryan finally satisfied the pretense of his 2 lives, and was content to start checking the thief. He first took back his space bag and poured it into the thief's mouth with the psychedelic mushroom spore powder prepared inside to ensure that he would lie quietly for at least half a day. Only then did he specifically check what the thief was. After opening the thief's eyelids to confirm that he really passed out, the red pupil color proved his vampire status, which also caused Ryan to be a little hit. What about the elegant Dark Knight nobles? How did it fall to the point of touching bags on the street? Not to mention the unshaven uncle's face under the hood, not beautiful at all. It seems more suitable for robbery than thief. But think about the physical power of vampires. Taking advantage of chaos to steal packets in such a place where wizards are not suitable for firing spells is also a racial advantage. But what the beauty thief really is just in the book. Ryan began to on the uncle to see if there was any loot. Turn the thief all over. Only pulled out 2 Seco 6 nat in a pocket of clothes. Lane thinks this is illogical. People who do this business generally bring all their property to them, and this kind of veteran can't have only this amount of money on him. After running to the alley and carefully confirming that no one would come in, Ryan began to strip the thief's clothes to see if there were hidden pockets. Finally, on the thief's underwear, he saw a cloth pocket sewn on the underwear, releasing a space expansion spell. Ryan feels that this place is really difficult to start, but wealth is really powerful. Finally, Ryan resisted the vomiting and cut the underwear with a knife to remove it. After harvesting, Ryan covered Uncle Thief's clothes on him to avoid the gentleman's openness. Then he jumped up the roof of the windowsill, and found a place with more people to slip down the house and enter the crowd. Because of this harvest, Ryan no longer feels like shopping. He hastily turned the remaining half of the street and quickly left this wizard commercial street. After turning to an unmanned alley, Lane entered the grocery store in Wanji and began to count today's loot. After all, this place can isolate all positioning magic. The expansion spell on this pocket is not permanent. Ryan is worried that the effect of the spell will disappear after a long time and the things inside will be lost. In the store he took out a piece of cloth and suspended it in midair with a floating spell. Then flipped the bag over and dumped the contents on the cloth. There are a lot of things in it. After finishing, Ryan found that the thief put a lot of things in the space bag on his underwear and they were messy. Finally, The things that were taken out were divided into 3 piles. The first pile was money, mainly composed of Psyche and Nate. There were a lot of gallons, about 120 gallons, which was a good harvest. The second pile is a dozen pieces of jewelry, but may have badges on them, which may belong to some pureblood families. Ryan decided to look for opportunities in another world next time to avoid trouble. The third pile is magical reaction items, only 3. One is a knight sword with sharp and anti-rust runes. For ordinary people, it is a magic weapon. It is a pity that there is no magic damage and it is useless for wizards. The second one is a book with the art of flame written on the cover in Spanish. Ryan turned a few pages, but fortunately he can understand this from the Spanish he learned from the assassin's heritage. He found this to be a black magic book describing how to use Lijian, which is very rare and useful. However, Ryan's current magic level can't be learned. The third piece is an ancient parchment. Unlike what I saw on the street before, this is a piece of parchment that is really old. There are several mountains with strange shapes drawn on it, and a skull is marked with red in between the mountains. Although this picture is very realistic, it is similar to a photo. Unfortunately, Ryan didn't seem to see where this was. He missed the internet era of his previous life very much, and if he had a smartphone, he would soon find his place. This caused Ryan to be extremely curious about the contents of the parchment. But since he couldn't find the corresponding place now, he gave up his plan to get to the bottom. After all, I came to Iceland for a holiday this time, and what I find is treasure hunting. Thinking about this, Ryan threw all the things he bought this time into the 1G grocery store, and then hurried out of the grocery store to the hotel. After all, I made an appointment with my father Mr. Lambert to return to the hotel at 12 noon, and the time is now very tight. Fortunately, Icelanders have fewer cars and less traffic jams. So 3 minutes after 12, Ryan finally rushed back to the hotel in time. Parents were waiting for Ryan in the hall, and he didn't say anything when he saw him come back on time. After a lunch break, the next day, Ryan's family went to Akureyri to attend the wedding of Mr. Lambert's friend. After a short flight of 45 minutes, Lane and his family came to this small city. Akureyri, Iceland's second largest city. Known as Iceland's northern capital. It is located at the end of the Eyjafjord, the northernmost part of Iceland, on the edge of the Arctic Circle. It is backed by snowy mountains, facing Bayou, and has beautiful scenery. Ryan came when they came in July. This city close to the Arctic Circle is under the polar day and can see the sun almost 24 hours a day. Ryan felt that the city had the deepest feeling for him, that the city seemed to have no people, and the streets were empty. But think about it too, cities with more than 10,000 people cover the size that only cities with more than 100,000 people have. It seems inevitable to be empty. The wedding was held in Akureyri Church, which was built on a small slope. Standing at the door of the church, you can overlook the city, the fjord, and the mountains and see opposite. The scenery is very beautiful. The wedding itself has nothing too elaborate, and it is no different from the ordinary Western wedding. Ryan felt that the wedding was held in such a place. The scenery is indeed beautiful, and it can also reflect a sense of sacredness. But too deserted. Fortunately, after the wedding, the Lane family can move freely. They rented a farmhouse in Reykjavik and began a holiday of up to 10 days. European-style vacations and tourism are very different from Chinese tourism. Europeans prefer to stay quietly in a place and relax completely, rather than walking around every point. It's just that this kind of vacation is a little too boring for Ryan. After writing every day, I feel that there is nothing to do except reading. So while parents enjoy the hot springs and relaxation here, Ryan decided to go through some of Iceland's attractions through Fellow.com. His father, Mr. Lambert, supported the plan. He thought that the boy should try to make his own way. However, Ryan felt that he clearly wanted to take the opportunity to remove Ryan's light bulb and enjoy the two-person world. Chapter 54, Unexpected Discovery. In the days after, Ryan visited a lot of places and had to admit that Fellow did have his convenience. Let Ryan feast his eyes on traveling to many places. Whether it is the more beautiful colorful wooden houses of local residents as if they were added with a filter under the extreme daylight, or the snow-capped glaciers, or even the ice floating from the glaciers in the river reflects the shining light. These views have brought Ryan an excellent travel experience, and on the magical side, he visited and fed the giant monsters of the North Sea, lamenting that these giant monsters may be bigger than the big squid in Hogwarts, and also admired the endangered animal Deadbird in the reserve. Naturally, Ryan took many photos. He picked out a few of them and asked the photo studio to make postcards, and sent them to his friends through the extremely northern Owl post office on Sakia Street. This made him receive a lot of letters from owls the next day. Some roommates expressed envy, and the Weasley twins asked Lynn to purchase some Icelandic magic materials, because Ryan had read many and complicated books. Once when the Weasley twins discussed a question that Ryan had seen, Ryan responded with ease. Afterwards, the friendship was slowly established. It's just that Ron and Hermione's letters, apart from thanking Ryan's postcards, mentioned that there was no reply to writing to Harry, so they felt a little nervous. Ryan did not see Harry's reply in this batch of reply. He estimated that his letter was intercepted by Dobby the house elf, just like Hermione Ron. So Ryan wrote to Hermione to tell them that Harry's safety had always been followed by Professor Dumbledore, and there would be no major problems. But if there is no response, you can go to Harry and A's house to see. Time is slowly passing by in this leisurely tour. This kind of environment gives people a sense of relaxation that has never been felt elsewhere. At least Ryan felt that his parents' fatigue due to work seemed to be reduced a lot. One day Ryan was looking around on Reykjavik Street while preparing to visit a museum. Suddenly an oil painting attracted him. This painting belongs to an oil painter sitting on the street selling paintings. The level of painting is very common, but the mountain on the painting looks almost the same as the mountain on the treasure map I obtained. So he stepped forward and asked the painter, "Sir, may I ask where is this painting? I have been traveling here for several days, but I have never seen the mountain on this painting." The painter put down his pen and said, "This is a scene I saw when I was hiking on the Asa volcano a few years ago. The weather was very sunny that day. I was preparing to go to Lake Viti Lake with some companions to experience the geothermal lake swimming pleasure. The result is halfway through the sky." Speaking of this, the painter seemed to think of something terrible and shivered. Then he continued, "At that time, the wind was blowing hard. We were all sitting in the car and worried that the car would be blown away. The wind stopped after half an hour. I saw a group of devil-like peaks on the empty ice sheet before, and it disappeared in less than a minute in front of me. Later I asked the residents nearby. They told me that it was called Devil Mountain, and it was said that the place was where the devil lived. Most of the time it was hidden in hell, and only came to the world in rare cases." Lane thought about it after listening to the painter. Most of the time it was invisible and only occasionally was discovered. This is quite consistent with what happens when wizards use magic to cover certain places. If some covert magic arrays are not maintained, it will indeed occasionally fail over time. It seems that we need to investigate it first. Ryan bid farewell to the painter and found a hidden place. He took out the cosmetics he had bought before and put on a makeup on his face, disguised as a Native American, or yellow men, barely disguised. This is the assassin's heritage. Things. Then go to Sakya Street to get news. Ryan disguised himself as a native wizard who came from the Americas and traveled, and inquired the shop owners in English with a Spanish accent in the Caribbean, and soon gained something. That place is a natural magic point, so a magic barrier is formed to prevent others from discovering it. The wizards discovered this place more than 30 years ago. It's just that the wizard who explored before found only an abandoned altar in that place, and nothing else. Later, many wizards also visited that place to study, but unfortunately never heard of what was discovered. So basically there are no wizards to visit there. However, if you want to go, it is not difficult. Use the Flyway network to go to the Alpine Giant Monster Reserve in Vatnajökull, then rent a broom and fly for about 10 minutes. After collecting these materials, Ryan felt extremely hurt. "I thought I found a treasure location that was nothing but found that the place had been discovered by others long ago, and even opened up as a tourist spot. It was still unpopular because there were no special features." This gives him a strong sense of loss. You reading www.uukanzu.com. Is it just a matter of doing things? Now that the goal has been found, it is a pity not to look at it. After finishing his homework the next morning, the hard-working student party, Ryan packed up things and went to the altar of Devil Mountain. After rotating for dozens of seconds in the fireplace of Flyway, Lane appeared in a small house hidden by magic. There is a notice on the wall of the house: "If you want to take a swim in Lake Viti, please put on mole clothes here." Not far from the fireplace, there is a counter where a middle-aged 50-year-old witch dozes off. Lane woke him up in the past. "I'm going to visit the altar of Devil's Hill. Can you rent a broom here?" "Oh, another young man who has been pitied by the legend of the treasure, but unfortunately now you have fewer and fewer people," the middle-aged wizard said, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Rent 12 psyches a day with a deposit of 5 gallons. After that, he took a broom that looked okay and placed it on the counter. Ryan paid the price and spent 3 more psyche renting a robe with a heating function and a goggles. After all, it was very cold to fly in the sky, and he was busy learning coma and some spells related to combat. There was no time to learn life mantras like self-learning insulation mantras. This place is not far from the altar of Devil Mountain, and you can even look at the mountain peaks that look strange and devilish. Ryan rode the flying broom and flew there in just 10 minutes. This is because the broom is old and Ryan's driving skills are also a bit problematic. If Harry rode his light wheel for 2000, it might be there in 5 minutes. Lowered the broom. Lane found that the broom was parked at the beginning of a small stone road. He put down his broom and proceeded to the altar along the gravel road in the direction indicated by the sign on the roadside. Chapter 55, Nightmare. This path passes through a canyon and is very quiet. Only the sound of wind blowing across the mountain walls and the sound of gurgling water after the snow melted could be heard. It may be because this place is near the ice sheet and the environment is bad. There are no trees and flowers on the ground, only some moss grows tenaciously on a stone. Walked along this stone road for about 10 minutes, turned a big bend, and appeared in front of an empty space. In the middle of the open space, there is an altar made of 3 layers of stone, and the Niven is carved on it. In the distance, a few strange mountain peaks stood there. Ryan took out the treasure map and found that the terrain of this place is basically the same as that on the treasure map, and this open space is where red crosses are painted. But what exactly does this treasure map have to say? Can't anyone be joking? But if there is a secret, it will not be so easy to find. After all, it can be seen from the traces on this treasure map that the thief should often touch this treasure map. It is likely that he has been looking for it a few times here. Since the place where the fork is drawn is this open space, Ryan decided to start looking here. At the first sight he saw a large wooden sign nailed to the mountain wall. Introduced this altar on the sign, saying that this altar has more than 1,000 years of history. The text above is a tribute to the ancient Viking wizards who praised all things in nature. Everything in nature? This is rare. The ancient Viking wizards were more concerned about things like thunder and lightning storms and even the strengthening of the human body. There is not much research on natural things, which may be a breakthrough point. Thinking of this, Ryan took a lot of plants from his shop and placed them around, and then began to communicate with the plants. There are some happy feelings from the plants. It seems that the environment of this place should be quite suitable for various living things. Ryan himself can feel that the whole person seems to be more relaxed here. It's just that Ryan's strengthened sixth sense always feels something is wrong with this place and should not be as peaceful as it seems. Bypassing the back of the altar, Lane found a small mound here, and the sign next to it said that this was the place where the body was buried after the sacrifice. This is the reason why when Ryan chatted with others on the commercial street, everyone told why so many people came to study. At least in the wizarding world, the release of some ancient magic does require human life as a sacrifice. However, in the case of magic related to all things in nature, there has never been a spell that uses people as sacrifices. This altar is because of this weirdness, so there are many wizards to investigate. Ryan spent more than half an hour checking this place, but unfortunately found nothing. The plants discovered that there was nothing strange in the underground besides the human bones in the sacrificial pit. This made Ryan a little frustrated, but think of so many famous wizards who didn't see anything. It should be normal for a little wizard who had only been studying magic for a year to see things. If you think in a good direction, at least this time you have completed an adventure. You can brag about it with your classmates. Ryan was relieved at the thought of here. Because I want to explore today, Ryan got up early and woke up and kept busy. So as soon as he was relaxed, he felt a burst of sleepiness hitting his brain. Anyway, the guide map did not say that there is any danger in this place, and it can even be said that there are few creatures in this place. In this case, it is definitely a good idea to sleep in this place, and thinking of this place, he became more and more sleepy and immediately took action. He retreated back to the path, took out a large number of plants and set up a security circle around him. Take out the sunlight crystals and soak in the water to provide warmth. After everything was ready, Ryan pulled out his sleeping bag in a corner sheltered place and drilled into it. After a while, he fell asleep. The sun is open, but there are bones buried in the ground, and he dare not sleep there. Just fell asleep. Ryan realized that the situation was wrong, and he seemed to have left his original position because he found himself lying on this sheltered place. But all the plants around him disappeared. Turning his head, Ryan was surprised to find a trace of mist floating in the air, and a rusty smell came out of his nose. Found that the situation was not right, and Ryan got up nervously from the sleeping bag. It was only after he stood up that he realized that he was now in his 20s. Is this a dream? But it's too real. Ryan felt that he might be in a big trouble. It is likely that he fell into a trap from the beginning. After all, according to his habit, under normal circumstances, he would not choose to sleep outdoors without preparation. Fortunately, Wanji grocery store was only severely disturbed to judge that Ryan was in a fighting state. Although it was impossible for Ryan to take refuge in the Wanji grocery store, he could take things out of it. Lane began to summon plants, but found that the summoning was not a plant at all, but one green dot after another. When these little light spots were attached to Ryan, he found that he could actually use the skills of these plants. Whereas this, Ryan felt weird from the heart. But with the power of the system as a backing, Ryan decided to go around and see if there are any clues to help get out of trouble. He found that these mists came from the direction of the open space, so Ryan held the wand and slowly moved toward the open space. Around the corner, Ryan slowly protruded half of her head to spy on the open space. After seeing clearly the situation on the open ground, he could not help but take a breath of air and step back a few steps. Because he saw that the altar was alive again, the above rune began to slowly turn up, emitting an unknown light. Around this altar, there are more than a dozen black shadows jumping around the altar, as if to do a sacrifice. There are also several shadows on the altar. I don't know what I'm doing. After stabilizing his mind, Ryan continued to lean out and observe carefully. It was then that he discovered that the dancing black shadows next to the altar were not humans he thought they were at all, but some monsters with only human outlines, consisting of pieces of meat sticking together with red sticky liquid. The black shadows on the altar are like mummies. Their withered skin reveals strange black tattoos, blinking with their kneeling rhythm as if they are breathing. Then a piercing and strange roar came into Ryan's ear, and a sense of desolation greeted us. With a roar, a line of blood flew from the monsters under the altar to the middle of the circle of mummies on the altar, forming an unknown blood-red ball. Finally, with the sound of ping, black and red flames rose on the ball. The blood-red mist around him appeared thicker. Ryan had a voice in his heart telling him that he should go out now to stop this nightmare from continuing, and then there might be very bad results. Chapter 56, Nightmare Battle. When you are overwhelmed by something clueless, intuition can guide you in the only direction. No matter what you do, it is better than sitting still. So Ryan shot when an unknown black-red flame ignited on that blood cell. He created the cherry bomb in his hand, then stuffed the cherry into a bottle filled with crystals of sunlight, and finally pinched the countdown to throw the bottle directly to the monsters on the altar. Because the assassin's inheritance gave Ryan an unprecedented excellent athletic ability, this jar was thrown directly into the open space surrounded by the mummy in the center of the group, and then burst. There was no time for those monsters to react at all. Suddenly a sun appeared on the altar, and the monsters wailed in such vigorous sunlight. After the strongest flash of light passed, Ryan narrowed her eyes and looked towards the altar, found that the blood cell has completely disappeared. It seems that it has been purified. Both the monster on the altar and the monster dancing around the altar were hit hard. The body seemed to be burned. Even more than half of the assembled monsters under the altar were fatally hit and scattered into carbides. The mummies on the altar were stronger. They almost ate a sunburst close to the body, but 4 of the 7 mummies survived. Although the appearance is already burnt, it is no different from coke. Naturally, these monsters found Ryan, an uninvited guest, and roared with the mummy on the altar. The following gangsters flew in the direction of Lane's hiding. Ryan turned around and ran. After all, the real world is not a game. In any case, the station output of the fortress flow is definitely not suitable for most scenes. He felt that it was the best way to use his maneuverability to slowly consume and fight monsters. Thinking in his head, Ryan hooked the mountain wall around the path with his claws and moved quickly above it. From time to time, he threw a few sun crystals onto the close-together strange monster. Here I have to praise the magic. The original assassiness. The claw hook rope has a series of complex structures to ensure that the long rope can be rolled up without taking up space, but the magic of a telescopic spell perfectly solves the contradiction between the length and volume of the rope. Using the sunlight bursts generated by the sunlight crystallization after the collision, the monsters are prevented from advancing and causing harm to them. In such a chase battle, there were 2 pieces of the combination puzzle that had been hit a lot earlier because the rush was too forward and was repeatedly attacked. After many injuries, it seems that the damage tolerance has reached the limit, and after stopping each other to receive a crystallization of sunlight, they stopped there. Afterwards, a trace of scorched black slowly spread from the place where it was hit to the whole body, and the last clattering became a place of carbon slag. Ryan was encouraged by this result, and he just planned to continue to kill all these combined monsters by kite flying. As a result, there was another scream from the altar. All the merging monsters immediately stopped chasing Ryan as if they had heard any order, turned their heads, and ran to the original starting position. Ryan felt something was wrong, trying to throw crystals of sunlight on those retreating monsters. The monsters just tried to avoid them, but didn't turn back to fight Ryan. These monsters obviously want to have some conspiracy or what big moves to prepare. Ryan is not the protagonist in the anime who is foolish in the anime and waits for others to prepare for the action. At first glance, they know that they will definitely have problems running back, so now it is best to attack as much as possible while the flattening monsters have not returned, and weakening it is definitely the best choice. He chased and threw sunlight crystals at several assembled monsters, but the pieces of meat on those assembled monsters continued to move, dispersing the damage of these positive energies on them, and after throwing away some pieces of meat that were damaged too seriously, the flattering monsters ran faster, which also made Ryan's shooting rate continue to decline. Seeing that this did not work, Ryan ventured to throw out the claw hook attached to the rope and grab the spelling monster, trying to pull it over. But it only slightly moved the flesh on his body. The claw hook grabbed an empty space, and was pulled back by Len's force, almost hurting himself by mistake. Ryan experimented with firing peas, flames and psychedelic mushroom spore powder. As a result, he embarrassedly found that the firing of pea had a recoil, making him farther away from the monster, and the pure physical damage was not good for the monster. The range of flame and spore powder is not enough. Around a corner, Ryan grabbed a stone wall and made a short approach to the front of the assembled monsters. Then he used a claw hook to set a trip horse to the waist of the person to try to stop the monsters. As a result, the remaining 6 monsters rushed together and directly pulled the rope. While the monster slowed down, Ryan fired several spells, but although all of them hit the monster, they had no effect. It can be seen that in addition to the light and life energy that are completely opposite to the monsters in the crystal of the sun, other magics do little harm to these monsters. All attempts to stop and eliminate monsters in advance have failed, in addition to leaving a lot of scorch marks on the monsters and forcing them to give up a lot of flesh and blood. No monster was destroyed during the pursuit. Ryan could only watch them turn the last corner and successfully ran into the open space. After Ryan followed the turn, he saw a terrible scene. The blood cell on the altar that had just been thought to be thoroughly purified floated again in the air, releasing blood mist outward. These monsters began to recover after absorbing the blood mist, and the burnt marks on their bodies slowly receded, revealing disgusting meat and withered skin. "Did you just do useless work just now?" Ryan thought somewhat desperately, but after looking closely, he found that the matter had not reached that point. The monster that has been destroyed has not been resurrected, and the disappeared flesh on the united monster has not grown back. The mummies recovered when they were fancy, but the strange tattoos on their bodies disappeared. The most important thing is that the blood cell that Ryan just saw was at least as big as a football. But now it has shrunk to at most one baseball size. The monsters did not attack Ryan after they found him out, but began to surround the altar and continue their strange ritual. Lin tried to stop it, but it was a pity that blood-red mist rose around the altar, blocking all the things that Ryan threw in. Not only the sunlight crystal cannot be lost, but the magic was also blocked by this blood-red barrier. Lin tried to throw a few stones, and the stones easily crossed the barrier and hit the altar. This protective cover should only be aimed at energy attacks. The sunlight crystal is a solid energy condensation, so it can't pass. The only killer is actually useless. Ryan is a little frustrated. Is this going to make him rush into the barrier and fight the monsters? Chapter 57, Behemoth on the open ground. No matter what happens, panic is useless. Ryan took a few deep breaths to calm down, and then his brain started to move quickly. Suddenly he saw a lot of stones near the surrounding mountain walls, which should be the gravel eroded by the glacial movement here. These stones are numerous in number, varying in size, and have angles on them. Seeing these stones, an idea quickly formed in his heart. Yugadim Leviosa. Ryan read a floating spell at a stone that was half his height. Then he floated the stone over the altar and cancelled the spell. The stone quickly hit a mummy from the height of 3 floors, and the mummy was smashed, and the strange howling in his mouth followed. This also made the rhythm of the shimmering light on the altar suddenly chaotic. Looking at the effect, Ryan used his wand to find more stones from all over and threw it on the altar. It is likely that the altar has no extra energy to resist, and the monsters can only be smashed. This also led to the blood cells gradually getting darker as the flashing light became brighter. The mummy on the altar discovered this situation, but because the ritual was in progress, he could not command other monsters to attack Lion. Seeing the ceremony was about to fail, the 4 mummies on the altar suddenly inserted their claws into their chests, and a trace of black and red smoke flew from their chests to the baseball-sized blood ball flying in the air. As the mummy moved, the monsters under the altar also changed. Soon they were completely disintegrated and turned into a torrent of flesh and blood flowing down the steps around the altar onto the altar. This situation is a very evil sacrifice. At first glance, Ryan tries to interrupt this process. But when the sacrifice began, a transparent blood-colored barrier was raised on the altar, and all the stones thrown out later were bounced away. Lane had no choice but to retreat to the mountain pass at the entrance of the open space, holding the wand in one hand and a spare grappling hook in the other. After all, the mobs just now can't be carried hard, not to mention that a big guy might appear. So by the mountain road just became Ryan's only choice. The time passed slowly, and the mist around him became thicker and thicker, and the monsters on the altar have changed. The strange flesh and blood wrapped the blood cell to form a huge cocoon, and the mist from the mummy's chest floated towards the cocoon. As the mist slowly flew from the mummy's chest to the blood cocoon, the mummy also quickly weathered, and finally all the mummy turned into fly ash. At the same time, the blood cocoon gave off a dazzling light, forcing Ryan to close his eyes. After the light passed, Ryan saw that almost everything on the altar had disappeared, leaving only a blood-red giant wolf standing alone. It looked close to 2 floors, and the saliva dripping from sharp teeth continued to corrode on the stone altar one pit after another. The giant wolf screamed in the sky, and then turned his unscathed gaze to Ryan's hiding place. Ryan's pupil shrank, and the newly acquired 6th sense could feel the strong killing intention of the giant wolf to himself. This is endless. Lane smiled bitterly, and it was obvious that he had now figured out what had happened today. Some actions in the vicinity of the altar may have awakened the long-sleeping altar. This altar was prepared to awaken a monster according to the original plan. As a result, Ryan intervened and destroyed part of the awakening ceremony. It is likely that the monster did not wake up as originally planned, causing it to endure with Ryan now. I'm just taking a vacation. How can I encounter such a bad thing? Seeing the giant wolf make a striking posture, Ryan quickly used the rope and claw hook to swing around the surrounding mountain wall, avoiding the giant wolf attack. This giant wolf has a sensitivity that is completely inconsistent with his size. He can even use his claws to hook the stone wall to move on a nearly vertical cliff. While evading, Ryan also used various methods to fight back, but all had little effect. The magic hits the wolf like a mud ball into the sea without any movement. Only the fire dragon's flame and sunlight crystals can produce lethality, but each time only a shallow scorch mark is left on the fur of the wolf, and the breath will recover as before in a few breaths. Fortunately, in addition to the amazing defensive power and strength of this wolf, it seems that even the wolf has no basic IQ. In some places it can be avoided. The wolf actually hit the stone directly and rushed over. This also allowed Ryan to throw away the giant wolf's attack by turning multiple times while escaping. Seeing that the wolf hit at least 7 or 8 stone walls and still chasing after him, Ryan felt that every black and evil power with a little level had the same idea in the face of the sudden changes in the original plan. Get rid of the trouble. Whether it's Tom Riddle in the True Wizard Tournament, or a monster that has left behind this altar. Give priority to killing the guy who pops up suddenly. Even if the giant wolf obviously lost his intelligence due to the ritual error, he still refused to pay attention to Ryan. Reading www.yuukanzu.com seems that his only goal since his birth was to kill Ryan. And the giant wolf who lost IQ also made all of Ryan's methods of disruption useless. It ignored all other things, chasing Ryan to attack. Ryan felt that it would not be a way to go on like this. After all, he is a human being, not a robot, and there is no way to stay tireless. And looking at the muscles of the giant wolf, we know that if the physical endurance of the game, Ryan is definitely not his opponent. At this time, he could only take a risk. Ryan just observed that although the giant wolf kept waving his front paws, he did not go all out with every claw swing. On average, only once every 5 times would he be in the stone there were scratches on it, and the other 4 times Ryan felt that even his own armor curse could be carried. Must bet at this time, because Ryan can't afford it, but the success rate of the plan is not too low. Even if missed, 80% of them may not be spiked. You can try it. Although Ryan is now almost certain that he is in a lucid dream, the magic world can sometimes kill people in his dreams. He does not want to be the victim of this strange dream. Thinking that Ryan slowed down here, something slipped into his right hand. The giant wolf found Ryan slowed down and launched the attack without hesitation. Ryan was suspended in the air by the rope at this time. Facing the giant wolf's claws could not escape the narrow and long range of the attack. So after giving an armor spell to his body, he gave up the rope and fell to the ground. The instinctive response of the giant wolf is not slow. After watching the shot down, he did not receive any moves, but slid his claws down. Because of this plan, the giant wolf also exhausted the kinetic energy that had just been saved. This trick was blocked by Lion with an iron armor spell, but as the distance drew closer, the giant wolf opened his mouth and bit at Lion. Chapter 58, Forgotten History. Lane watched the big wolf's big mouth grow bigger and bigger in his field of vision, but he couldn't avoid raising his right hand and throwing the things in his hand into the wolf's throat. At the same time, the whole person rushed to the left in a state of extreme embarrassment. The giant wolf bit an empty space, and the upper and lower teeth collided to make a loud knock. He looked at his target with his right eye, and found that this human is now lying on the ground. As long as he tilts his head, he can bite him. But there was no panic expression on this man's face, but a strange smile. The giant wolf was about to kill the man. Suddenly there was a sharp pain in his chest. A huge mouth appeared on his chest, and his whole body seemed to drain away along the mouth. It couldn't hold on anymore and lay on the ground. And the human climbed up, prying the mouth of the giant wolf with a sword, and threw a thing into it. At this last moment, the wolf's consciousness, which has been chaotic since he was awakened, is finally awake, and he recalls that he once seemed to be a human. At this time, the things in his mouth also exploded, and his eyes were completely black, and he completely lost consciousness. Lane saw that the giant wolf was blown up and half of his head was completely dead, and finally he took a breath and sat on the ground. Then tossed the corroded sword far away. He just risked throwing a jar full of sunshine crystals and cherry bombs into the giant wolf's throat. Actually, he was betting that the defense in the giant wolf was not as strong as in vitro. As a result, he won the bet, and the giant wolf exploded in the esophagus and blasted his chest while the swallow was swallowing it. This is even better than Ryan had expected, and directly blew the giant wolf. After that, Ryan chose to use the last jar to make up the knife, which completely wiped out the monster. Fortunately, everything went well, and now there are less than 100 crystals of sunlight in Ryan's hands. If I was hesitating for a while, I would definitely be in a situation where I would be exhausted. Sure enough, he will lose. But how to leave this strange place? Ryan sat down and began to think about the problem. The mist covering the sky slowly dissipated, and the sun shed. Lean turned to look around, and found that the surrounding environment began to come alive. No longer the feeling of depression that was originally enveloped by the mist, but the body of the giant wolf changed under the sunlight. Pieces of debris rose from the body of the giant wolf, and then, under the sunlight, they turned into golden spots and scattered into the surrounding environment. The body of the giant wolf slowly disappeared. Such a big loot, it just disappeared. Ryan felt some pain, and he walked towards the body of the giant wolf, carefully observing how this thing disappeared. As a result, he found that the body of the giant wolf melted like snow in the sun. Even if he risked a wolf hair, the wolf hair quickly turned into a little golden light and drilled out of the seam of his palm. To make matters worse, these things cannot be stuffed into any space equipment at all. But it was just a dream, and it wouldn't let me enjoy the pleasure of getting a baby in the dream. Ryan thought bit by bit, and didn't find that the light in the heart of the giant wolf did not disappear in the sun, but gradually transformed into gold. Looks like an eyeball. When that thing finally turned into gold, whizzed towards Ryan. Ryan only felt the back of his head cold. A burst of golden light exploded in his mind. He later found himself a bystander, watching the life of an ancient Viking wizard in the third person. This Viking wizard lived more than 1,000 years ago and was one of the first humans to set foot on Iceland. At that time, the wizards also lived with ordinary people as leaders and protectors of ordinary people, because in that wild time, the distribution of magical creatures is much wider than it is now, and some will be dangerous to all humans. To a strange place, if there is no wizard, it is difficult for human beings to stand in a harsh environment. In such an awful environment, survival is the most important thing. As for the method of survival, it is no longer the focus, so there was not much conflict between ordinary people and wizards. At the beginning, this Viking wizard used a series of natural magic to soothe nature and ease the relationship with the local magical creatures. The first altar on the island was also covered at that time. It was said that the altar was actually something similar to the Tower of the Mage. Allows the wizard to perform ritual magic on it and magnify the effect of the spell. This kind of life in harmony with the surrounding nature has passed for 30 years. In these 30 years, the Viking wizard has also changed from a young man to an old man with white temples. The population of the tribe has doubled due to the turbulent weather over the past 30 years, which has also increased the demand for resources. Humans and magical creatures are also in conflict more and more, even on the brink of war. Even if the wizard and his apprentices adjusted the relationship between the two sides repeatedly, the local fragile ecological environment destroyed these efforts. After a sudden blizzard, the lack of resources led to a large-scale conflict. Under the magical attack of magical creatures, human beings lacking legal professions retreated. After seeing his familiar people die, the Viking wizard chose to abandon the way of natural balance to fight back. He used the original magic to soothe the undead, to summon the grievance, and the blood, flesh, and bone magic to heal the disease, to strengthen the clan and wake the corpse. At the beginning, the Viking wizard still maintained his peace of mind, only summoning the undead who were willing to fight for himself, and strengthening the voluntary sacrifice of the clan. But as the war between the two sides gradually escalated, the blood of the clan made him step by step paranoid. At first, it only restrained some undead spirits who were unwilling to serve, and put them into the battlefield. Later, they even used sacrifice magic to gain vitality on a large scale. Not only sacrificed prisoners and animals, but also even sacrificed old and weak women and children who had no combat capabilities in the tribe. The wizard of Viking sometimes thought about whether his behavior was correct, but the brutal war and explosive power made his thinking twisted, and he transformed into a power-oriented wizard. Although the Viking wizard made so much effort, there were still too few humans in Iceland at the time. The magical creatures have an absolute advantage, and the human front is still shrinking day by day. Finally, humans throughout Iceland were forced to retreat from the western coastal plain to the present mountainous region in the middle, abandoned the rich fishing grounds and fertile land, and used the mountainous terrain to survive. After another winter, there are less than 100 people left without food and clothing, and it is obvious that they are unable to fight anymore. But they have been surrounded by most of the magical creatures on Iceland. At this time, they made a bold decision in desperation. Even if they all sacrificed, they would drag all the magical creatures on this island to hell. Chapter 59, The Final Truth. The surviving humans built the last altar near this volcano, which is what Ryan saw. This is also the only surviving altar in Iceland. Other altars were destroyed during the war. They first chose this altar to communicate with their surroundings. Later, in addition to the wizard and his disciples, others committed suicide with hatred and profaned this altar. This altar also transformed from a natural altar into a blood altar. Using the resentment of the passing of life, the Viking wizard communicated the powerful energy contained in the nearby volcanic underground, and through the temporarily made blood altar, this force was contaminated and led out. After absorbing this contaminated power, the wizard and his disciples temporarily obtained powerful power, which opened the barrier between the world where Ryan is now and the real world, and then this powerful power took the wizards brought to this world with those magical creatures. Because the barrier is broken, except for this small space, other places are full of powerful space turbulence. Most of the magical creatures are involved in the turbulent flow of space and die, while the rest fight fiercely with the wizards. Finally, the Viking wizard swallowed the only treasure he carried when he left his hometown, the blood of a mythical giant wolf. The incarnation of the giant wolf died with a few most powerful magical creatures left. Over time, the turbulence in the space subsided, but the grievances of the dead are still floating in this world. And Ryan is because a lot of sunlight crystals and various plants are released in the real world. The powerful vitality activated the grievances in this world. After awakening the grievances, the ritual magic was carried out according to the obsession of the previous life, and the result brought Ryan in. Because they are resentful souls, they just instinctively attack all living creatures. Ryan also had to fight against them for this reason. Lijian also found that this world is between real and unreal, but more inclined to the soul world. So plants like him cannot be released in this world, and his body becomes about 20 years old under the influence of the age of the soul. After absorbing this memory, Ryan woke up, lamented the blue ray of mankind, to the hardship and sacrifice of Lijian Forest. He dug a hole in the altar where he could find the wreckage, and bowed respectfully, expressed his respect for these human pioneers, although he didn't agree with the wizard's sacrifice to his compatriots at all. Obviously, at the same time as the sacrifice of the first humans to land on the island, it also wiped out more than 90% of the magical creatures on the island. This allowed later humans to successfully take root on the island. Although due to the role of magic, later humans had forgotten that a group of humans had landed on this island before them and sacrificed them all. Navigation technology of that era, it is quite normal that there is no news after taking a boat out to sea. Perhaps their hometown thought that they had died in the sea after going out of shipwreck. After all, it was an era when there was no flyway net, no phantom appearance, and even the flying broom was not invented. For wizards, going far away is no safer than ordinary people. Both wizards and Muz are vulnerable in front of nature. After lamenting this lost truth, Ryan began to carefully recall the memory he just absorbed, trying to find a way to leave here. As a result, when he cleared his memory, he found that he had a new harvest, that is, the Viking wizard life magic. Yes, life magic is not imaginary undead magic. The Viking wizard was called a shaman in that era, and he was a wizard who communicated nature and life and death to gain strength. But because of his madness in his lifetime, all the magic that communicated with nature was wiped out, leaving only the life magic related to life and death. The life magic he mastered is divided into flesh and soul. Ryan carefully read the inheritance and found that in fact these life magics themselves have no tendency, just the power of life and death. If used for good purposes, this magic can heal patients, strengthen themselves, soothe souls, and exorcise evil spirits. It even has a strong lethality to all twisted unnatural life. But once it is made into evil, this magic can enslave souls, drive corpses, and even create countless twisted monsters. For example, I have seen those combined monsters made of meat and blood. Ryan originally felt that these monsters were extremely evil, and they also hated the magic that caused them all. But after carefully reading these things, Ryan hesitated. He was undecided about whether to learn the magic. On the one hand, it is the desire for power. On the other hand, it is the fear of the undesirable consequences that may result if it is out of control. After a short period of thinking, Ryan chose to accept this knowledge. After all, he now holds the Wonji grocery store www.mtlnovel.com. In the future, he will see countless worlds and countless powers. Looking ahead and looking back must be nothing. Not to mention that he found that this power is not an evil power. Instead, they are exposed to different trends by the user's tendency. Now most of the magic that Ryan learned at Hogwarts belongs to this aspect of magic, so there is no need to worry too much. For example, a daily spell like a floating spell seems to be safe, but if you use this spell to float a person and then remove the spell, the effect is no different from the killing spell. This is also in line with an old proverb that Lane had heard in his previous life: doing things must not waste food for choking. Thinking about this problem, Ryan began to delve into the content of this world in the heritage so that you can return to the real world. This world is not the world created by the Viking wizard imagined by Ryan, but only that the wizard used the power of nature to block a small piece from the original world for his own use. Now with the passage of time and the disappearance of the grievances inside, the power of the blockade is gradually dissipated, which makes it harder for Ryan to leave. The essence of this world is actually the spiritual world composed of all natural life consciousness, and also the main component of world consciousness or Gaia consciousness. This world is not dead. Many spiritual beings survive here. Some wizards who are sensitive to solar nature can easily enter this world. Even some Muz may break into this world under certain circumstances. Many myths are compiled after ordinary people enter the world and see the stories that happen in this world. Ryan quickly mastered the methods of entering and leaving this world after receiving the inheritance. After making a gesture and reading a spell, Lane successfully left the world. Chapter 60, End of Adventure. Seemed to fly in a multicolored tunnel for a long time, and a flash of light flashed through, and Ryan finally felt that he came out of the tunnel. He opened his eyes and found himself still lying in the sleeping bag in the recessed shelter. He glanced around and saw that the plants were a little bit. It should be that the battle in that world consumed them too much energy. Ryan quickly took them back to the Wonji grocery store. After he started to check the Wonji grocery store, the sunlight crystal inside was almost consumed. Sure enough, there was a certain connection between the world and the real world just now. Ryan took out the Night Sword again, and found that although the Night Sword had no problem in appearance, all the magic runes in it, and even the structure of the sword body itself, collapsed. He just took the sword out and threw it gently on the ground. The sword shattered like a glass. It seems that what happened in that world, its consequences will extend to the real world. Fortunately, Ryan struggled to escape in that world, otherwise it would really die. Had to praise Wonji grocery store. Even in that strange world, you can contact Ryan and provide help. Otherwise, most of the things that can't be used will definitely suffer in that world. After checking all the items, Ryan took out his pocket watch and found that it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. which surprised him. After a last glance at the altar that was indistinguishable from a pile of ordinary stones, he quickly ran down the path towards the entrance. After changing to a flying broom, flying road net and taxi, Ryan finally rushed back to the residence where he lived before dinner. After dinner, the exhausted Ryan went to bed early. Lying on the bed, he thought about the source of the treasure map in doubt. After all, none of the people involved in the altar were spreading the news alive. So what is going on with this ancient treasure map, and how do they know about it? Lion decided to inquire about Saga Street tomorrow. Len quickly fell asleep due to his exhaustion. He slept soundly this night and did not have any dreams. Ryan got up early the next morning and felt refreshed, said goodbye to her parents after eating early, and went straight to Sakia Street to find the vampire thief and ask him what is going on with this parchment. Lane changed his face again before entering Sakia Street this time. He used quick-acting hair dye, contact lenses and a bunch of cosmetics to paint himself as a mixed Eurasian look, and used fluent American English to disguise himself as a tourist from the United States. Can speak American accent English. Ryan did not search directly on the street after entering the street. Instead, I started shopping again from a place I didn't look at last time. But while shopping, he paid attention to the situation on the street. There were also many interesting shops in places I didn't visit last time. For example, there is a specialty food shop. Most of the food inside can be used as biochemical weapons, such as canned herring from Sweden, fermented shark meat from the local, and kiwayak needs to stuff the petrol into the belly of the seal and ferment for 2 to 3 years. Although these are the characteristics of the North, Ryan feels that such things should not be given to friends as gifts. Otherwise, it will be cut off properly. But Ryan bought something from another store. That is the fish oil made by Magic Deep Sea Fish made by potion making method. This is better than industrially produced fish oil, and can also be used by moles. So I bought several cans of my pocket money and gave them to my parents after I went back. This commercial street is at the junction of Europe and the United States. So many wizards come and go. Lane even saw a 6th grade Hufflepuff schoolgirl shopping here. It's just that because he pretends to be someone else, he can't say hello. Finally saw the thief before when Ryan finished eating at noon. It must be said that the wizards were not very careful about the thief. Wearing a hoodie like this, pressing the brim very low, the sneaky guy walking on the street will soon be caught if he walks on the street of Mull. Lynn put the last piece of roasted lamb leg of black pepper into his mouth, then put down the knife and fork to go out and follow the thief. Seriously, the tracking experience that comes with his assassin heritage is very effective. The thief didn't find anyone following him at all. The thief soon succeeded. The victim didn't even find his wallet lost. It turns out that not every wizard uses the magic wallet with anti-theft function. When the thief went to the aisle between 2 houses covered in a whole pictorial to prepare for hiding the dirt, he was reapplied from the sky and slapped. After stripping the thief's only underwear again, Ryan took out the rope and tied the thief, took out a handkerchief to cover his eyes, and then poured the remaining half of the whiskey into the thief's mouth. You are reading www.uukanzu.com. After a severe cough, the thief woke up and struggled when he saw the darkness in front of him. But because of being tied up, the struggle has no effect. Ryan pulled out a crowbar and began to beat the thief according to the methods in the assassin's heritage. Who are you? What are you doing? The thief screamed, but unfortunately this place was his carefully selected hiding place, and the sound could not reach the streets outside at all. Say, what did you draw on the parchment map last time? Ryan asked with a low voice. Are you the last person? The thief's voice suddenly sounded sharp. No questions allowed. Answer my questions quickly. Ryan continued to beat him as he said. The vampire thief's lips wriggled slightly, and it looked like he was going to prepare some curse. Ryan knocked on his mouth with a crowbar, and a fang that was unique to a vampire was knocked down, and half of his teeth were knocked down with this fang. A red light flashed in his throat, and the vampire thief was really going to use a curse. Maybe a magical bite. Or it may be that Ryan hit his head to cause a concussion, or alcohol has an effect. Through the new life magic, Ryan perceives that his soul has started to be confused. At this time, Ryan hit the iron while hot, and released the newly learned soul-soothing technique to the unconscious thief. This magic itself is used to soothe the restless soul, but in some cases the other party can tell the truth. The effect of magic is better than expected. Probably because the thief has lost his mind. Ryan quickly asked his own question. Where did that parchment map come from? I made it myself, the thief said vaguely. Chapter 61, Coincidence? Coincidence. Lane thought that this parchment treasure map might come from a mysterious organization or a secret sect, or even some adventurers. They found such a treasure map by taking risks or collating ancient materials. Only such treasure maps, which have been obtained through painstaking searching, can be worthy of this deadly adventure and the inheritance of precious knowledge obtained after the success of the adventure. Especially when Ryan discovered that the thief was a vampire and strengthened this thought. After all, in the anime I watched in my last life, vampires have a lot of research on history, and even have a lot of secrets about treasures. But now the thief actually said that this thing was made by himself. Ryan felt a little weird, but life magic told Ryan that the thief was telling the truth. A little unwilling, Ryan continued to ask the vampire thief, "If you did it, why does this parchment map look so old?" "I used old ink and old parchment." The vampire's answer explained Ryan's question. "This kind of trick commonly used in the antique market. How come I didn't expect it?" Lane began to reflect on himself. Just before he started to reflect, he thought of another question. "Why do you want to draw a map and put it on your body?" "Because." Speaking of this, the vampire thief began to hesitate a little, and Ryan also felt that his soul began to fluctuate. Probably to recover. Seeing this, Ryan didn't say a word. Raising his crowbar was another beating. In fact, Ryan himself is a pacifist and he doesn't like to use violence. "But this time I almost sent my life away, so when I saw the culprit, there was more violence." Persuasion, physics, is useful. Even the legendary vampire can't carry Ryan's powerful persuasion. This also shows from the side that vampires are similar to humans in most cases. They are not as unconscious as the legend, but just a moving corpse. Of course, if a moving unconscious corpse, then Ryan will be difficult to convince much bigger. Release the magic again and soothe the soul of the vampire. The vampire completely explained why he wanted to bring such a map. Yuan intends to use this map to lure lone tourists, and then robs tourists with a few fox friends. As for why the altar was chosen, it is because the altar is indeed a real tourist attraction, which can be found in the information of various places, without causing the victim to doubt. But there are few people there and the terrain is rugged, so they can stop the road and rob. Hearing this, Ryan felt that he had nothing to say. An adventure he took at the risk of his life was actually caused by a fake map that coincided with a real adventure location when a robber tried to rob. Ryan felt this kind of coincidence was a bit weird, but it is not unacceptable to think about so many coincidences in history. After getting the truth of the matter, Ryan searched and took his 7-gallon coins, and threw the vampire bundle here again. Put the 2 dirty purses found from him in the lost and found office on Sakia Street, and then returned to the house in a daunting manner. In the remaining days in Iceland, Ryan did not continue to hang out, but lived in the bed and breakfast with his parents, while writing homework, while absorbing the knowledge gained from this adventure. The vacation time soon came to an end in this calm day. The Lane family packed their bags and took a flight from Reykjavik International Airport to London. After returning to London for only one day of rest, Ryan was called by Hermione to meet in the library. "Thank you for giving me my gifts. Those amulets are very interesting. I have seen them in some books. It's just that the sweets you sent were confiscated by my parents. You know they are dentists and I don't want me to eat too much." "Lots of sugar," Hermione told Ryan after the two greeted each other. Then they took out the homework they had finished and began to discuss. Hermione showed extreme admiration for Ryan's completion of the homework while traveling, and said that this kind of learning spirit is worthy of her learning. "Ryan, I just want to finish writing and have time to salt the fish." After discussing the problems encountered in the homework, the two people walked out of the library and sat down on the roadside benches to exchange the latest situation with each other. Ryan did not tell Hermione about his adventures. He felt that Hermione's age was not suitable for knowing such cruel things. Especially think about Hermione's establishment of a house self-rights promotion in the original text. The sorcerer slaughtered all the magical creatures on the island. So Ryan took out an entire album from his school bag and pointed at the photos to introduce the attractions, wetlands, glaciers, and volcanoes when he had been there. The dead bird on the treetop. Take a special boat to watch the huge North Sea siren underwater. There is also Sakia Street full of various exotic cultures. Oh, this is awesome. Unlike I can only stay at home reading books every day, even the magic wand can't be used. I'm really worried about what to do if I don't practice for so long. Hermione is here after listening to Ryan's account of this travel experience. Right. Hermione seemed to think of something to Ryan after complaining. Have you written to Harry recently? Written? More than one. Lane replied. Unfortunately Harry didn't reply to a letter to me. I don't think it's normal. Me too. Ron said he would find a way, hoping that he would have a way to receive Harry's reply. Anyway, Harry's disconnection is quite worrying, Hermione said. After, Ryan took out Dean Strand's 1st to 5th grade textbooks he shared them with Hermione, because the two had previously agreed that if they found interesting old books, they needed to share them with each other. Hermione frowned when she saw these books. Lane, I don't think we should read these books. After all, these are black magic. But this is Dean Strand's textbook, not those messy and dangerous black magic books. As one of Europe's 3 major schools, Dean Strand's textbook should not have too many problems. Ryan explained. Not to mention the pureblood families, more or less will teach these things to the children. And our wizards of Mull origin basically have no access to this knowledge. I heard the Weasley brothers say that many of the Ministry of Magic the staff can't even release a complete iron mantra. It's likely that many Mull-born wizards haven't been exposed to this kind of combat spell. Think about what we faced last year. I think this kind of combat spell we have to learn a little bit. Then there is no need to learn black magic. Hermione insisted on her point of view. Ryan sat up straight and decided to explain the problem to Hermione carefully. He didn't want to quarrel because of this kind of thing. Chapter 62, Discussion about Black Magic. What is black magic? Ryan started his topic from the most basic questions. Destructive and evil magic is called black magic. Hermione replied after thinking. This is the original words written in the black magic defense textbooks. It is worthy of our knowledge of all things. All textbooks can be remembered. Ryan praised Hermione with a slightly ridiculous tone. Then Zheng said, in fact, the core criterion for truly identifying black magic lies in evil rather than destructiveness. For example, a fire spell can make fire for us, but it can also create a deadly and very destructive fire. But with a fire curse cannot be considered evil. Yes, so I think the core criterion of black magic is evil, a kind of maliciousness to the object of the curse. This is why I object to you learning this. I don't want the classmates I know to become an evil black wizard. Hermione replied. But the problem is that the definition of evil magic is that as long as it produces negative emotions for the desired target when it is released, then this magic is evil. It is undeniable that this kind of magic with negative emotions is often more lethal. And as negative emotions increase, the power of the spell increases. What do you want to say? Hermione was confused. I just think that as long as negative emotions in certain areas should be allowed, it doesn't mean evil, Ryan said as he turned on the bookmarked page of the 3rd grade black magic textbook and pointed to one of the spells. Look, this magic needs to have an aversion to the target before it can form a force field from your wand and bounce off the target. Disgust is a negative emotion, but I think it is not evil. Compared with the power that these magic can show, this little negative emotion should not be a problem. After hearing Ryan's explanation, Hermione took a textbook and turned it over. Later, he said, it is indeed the top 3 schools in the European magic world. The textbooks used do not have the magic that looks too cruel, and I believe that even the Hogwarts professors will be more or less aware of this. Similar spells, but these are learned for the purpose of defending them. Note 1. I am worried that our age and our minds are very likely to be attracted by power and go astray. This is why I think that Hogwarts only allows students in the upper grades of the black magic defense skills to view certain black and white magic books. I think that in the upper grades, we will naturally be able to study relevant knowledge under the guidance of teachers, but it should also be for the purpose of resisting them. So what do you think should be done with this knowledge? I just want to learn some powerful magic to protect myself and my friends. After all, like last year's feeling of being helpless in the face of evil is really too bad. Ryan said, I believe that the power to resist black magic can only be learned through practice. It is not enough to only understand the theoretical knowledge. We should practice some self-defense magic. But I think we should not learn the content of these books, because this is black magic after all. I don't think the current situation is so bad that we need unscrupulous improvement. What happened last year is just some accidents. I will not object to you reading these books. Since you decided to learn to protect your own power, you can learn how to recognize them, respond to them, and learn some magic that can resist them by understanding these black magic. This is enough to fight against evil forces and protect themselves. Know that no other magic is necessarily as powerful as black magic. There is no need to cross the dangerous boundary to learn black magic. I think we should read these books together to ensure that no one takes a dangerous step. Hermione thought for a long time before he pursed his lips and said his opinion to Ryan. Ryan was a little surprised when she heard Hermione's answer, because he found that Hermione not only was not persuaded by him, but also tried to persuade him. It's just that Hermione's words also shocked him mentally. After a while of reflection, Ryan suddenly found that there was something wrong with his thoughts. Indeed, Ryan knows the plot, which is an advantage. But sometimes the plot also limits thinking. He knew that the war was about to break out, so he sometimes seemed to be eager for quick success. But neglecting owning a grocery store in 1G, there is enough time and channels to obtain powerful power, and there is no need to use some impetuous ways to enhance your strength. As a person with a psychological age over 30 years old, he has not yet seen a little girl clearly. This made him feel ashamed. Thank you, I almost missed it. Thank you for pointing me in the right direction. I swear I will never learn the black magic above. Ryan gave a solemn guarantee after listening to Hermione's answer. In order to express his determination, Lane handed over all these black magic textbooks to Hermione for safekeeping. Hermione looked relieved. After that, the two discussed some other things, and then went home for lunch. Ryan believes that Hermione is right. Black magic that may cause serious mental irreversible damage is not worth the risk to learn. But the other magic he masters still needs practice. This is the same as swimming. No matter how solid the theoretical knowledge is, it is certainly impossible to master this skill without going into the water to swim. Since you want to practice, you need to find a place that cannot be monitored by the Ministry of Magic. Ryan thought for a while and thought Plants vs. Zombies world is a good place to practice because there are enough targets there. What's more, it's been a long time since I left. I haven't visited it for a long time. Ryan wants to know how his house has been cleaned up. Ryan took advantage of the afternoon to go to the library to check and copy a lot of industrial materials related to daily life are ready to be brought to Dave as a gift. After all, it was a zombie apocalyptic world, although now humans are slowly becoming stronger and rebuilding their homes. But many things are not so easy to recover, Ryan intends to bring some materials related to daily chemical to help people in that world to rebuild a modern civilization. At dinner, Miss Sally, the mother, asked Ryan, "I have a question. Why have I gone to the library every morning after the summer vacation? I don't think the community library can have magic-related books." "Because I'm going to do homework with a classmate, mother," Ryan said while eating pasta on a plate. "Classmate? Dentist Granger's daughter? You seem to have said that she was the first of your grade last semester." Mr. Lambert also interjected at this time. Yes, I didn't pass her exam at the end of the last semester," Lane replied quietly. "So when you do homework with her, you have to learn her strengths. In fact, we have always been worried that you are a little proud of yourself because of the good grades in elementary school," Miss Sally said. Afterwards, the two of them taught Ryan about his attitude towards learning. Ryan discovered that he might have been misled by some propaganda before, who said that European and American parents do not pay attention to children's learning. This thing is almost the same in the world. Note, in the last book, Professor McGonagall once controlled a Death Eater with the Soul Retribution curse, but it is an unforgivable level of black magic. It can be seen that at least professors should all be black magic. It's just that most of the professors learn by the way for the purpose of researching to resist them, except for the professors of Snape-like Black Wizard origin. Chapter 63, Real War arrives. In the evening, after the parents are asleep, Ryan brought a lot of things to the Wanji grocery store. Probed the dragon grass on the counter with the newly learned life magic, and then Ryan discovered why the new plant could not be grown. It turned out that I injected too high-level energy into this plant. The dragon is one of the top creatures in the magic world, so it lacks a soul, which is why this plant has been unable to mature. After all, for a plant, it takes a long time to grow a soul. But Ryan felt that this time he went to the world of Plants vs. Zombies. Maybe he could get something that would promote the development of the soul of this plant. After exploring the plants, Lane opened a space door and went to the world of Plants vs. Zombies. He came to this world and found that it was already afternoon. After looking at the town, Lane discovered that the town was completely different from the previous one. Their zombies and barricades that had fallen on the road have been cleaned up, and the houses on both sides of the road have been repaired. Human activities have appeared in the houses. The most obvious change is that in the middle of the town, a huge energy tower stands in a small square inches front of the original Dave's house. Even if it is away from several houses, Ryan speeded up to the door of Dave's house, and just walked to his door and did not knock on the door. The door was opened. "Oh, my friend from a different world. The plants have told Dave that you are here in advance. Dave hasn't seen you for a long time, and I really miss you a bit." "Welcome, welcome." Dave reached out and patted Ryan on the shoulder and later let Ryan enter the room. Ryan found that the house was much cleaner than when he had come a few times, and Dave explained proudly next to him, "Since I built these robots, I have extended the defense circle a long distance. I used to hide ordinary people on the mountain can come back. At least Dave can now eat hot fresh meals." Was talking, a small robot walked by, also wiped around with a rag. "These robots are really flexible. I admire the civilization that can make these robots so smart by perforating steel plates and steam engines. By the way, I will show you my most proud invention recently. You must not think of it." Speaking of Dave taking Lane to the place where the energy tower was placed in the square inches front of the door, Lane saw at a glance that this energy tower seemed a little different from what he knew. Only a little white water vapor appeared in the uppermost chimney. It is important to know that even in the world of the Ice Age, where the energy tower was born, the upper chimney will inevitably roll black smoke and sparks when the coal combustion efficiency is raised to the limit. "How did you make the energy tower not smoke at all?" Ryan turned and asked Dave. This is about to involve my secret weapon." Dave nodded and greeted the engineers who were guarding the energy tower around him, while answering. After approaching the energy tower, Ryan found that the energy tower seemed to be different from the structure he had seen. The bottom of the energy tower was supposed to be a burning room with a thick ring of fireproof glass. It did not look like an observation window, but instead it looks like there is a greenhouse underneath. "Wait, greenhouse?" Ryan seemed to think of something, and ran beside the glass in 2 steps. Sure enough, inside is a group of torch stumps blazing blue fire. Dave also caught up at this time, cuddling Ryan's shoulder with one hand and pointing to the torch stump underneath. "Friend, look, as long as I feed them coffee beans and sunlight crystals, they can continue to burn like this. This is much more environmentally friendly than the original design of coal burning, and I don't have to worry about any energy crisis. I think I am a genius to make such improvements." "It is indeed a genius idea," Lane agreed. "By the way, I am here to give you some production processes and technologies for daily necessities, as well as the magical plant seeds that I have never seen before this time I traveled to a Nordic country. At the same time I want to find some zombies practice my magic." Dave took what Ryan handed him, handed the seeds to a robot, looked at a package of paper documents and said, "These things are very useful. After all, everyone is safe now and don't worry about food and clothing." Unfortunately, it is too far away from the outbreak of the disaster. Many of the daily necessities that we found before the disaster have expired and can no longer be used. These things just happen to relieve your urgency. But next time you can bring a mobile storage. So many paper documents is really a bit troublesome. No way. The world on my side is at least 10 years behind this world. I guess you don't have an ancient computer that can read floppy disks here? After listening to this reason, Dave nodded, handed the information brought by Ryan to the staff, and then said to him, "You said you want to find the zombies this time? You have to say that you are too coincidental. I have just accumulated a lot of strength recently and am ready to reclaim the first city. You stay here for one night and we will leave tomorrow. You can go with us." "Right." Dave seemed to think of something and went on. "You reading www.youkandenzoo.com. Your house has been completely organized, and the friends you introduced last time live there now. But the house is very big, don't worry about nowhere to live." Farewell to Dave. Lane came to his house behind Dave's house. Only then did he take a closer look at his own house for the first time. This is a red brick double-story house with 3 bedrooms and a warm fireplace. Lane went to the door and knocked. The door opened, and a little girl came out of it. It should be Jennifer Scott, the daughter of the duo. Jennifer was a little surprised to see Lane, then shouted into the room, "Dad, the brother who sent us to this world last time is back." Kenway, who was wearing a home costume, walked out of the room soon and saw Ryan greeted very warmly. "Hello, Mr. Ryan. Please come in quickly. I think you should not have dinner yet. I will use it later." Telephone. Phone. Yes, this is the word. I will use the telephone to ask the restaurant to bring dinner. Ryan walked into the living room, sat on the sofa and said to Kenway, "It seems that you are well adapted to this kind of life now, and even learned to call takeaway." "Take your blessing." Kenway poured a cup of black tea and said to Ryan, "After I came over, Mr. Dave read your letter of introduction and hoped that I would go to the investigation team to work. I think that job is suitable for me. At least this time I can be sure that this is the enemy and none of them are innocent. He also asked my daughter to go to school like other children. My daughter looks much better now, thank you very much." "Ah, as long as you think you are doing well. I don't want anything wrong with my commitment." Lane replied, "I am heartily happy that I successfully helped those in need." Chapter 64, Real War Preparation. After chatting with Kenway for a while, there was a knock at the door. A spider-like robot stood at the door, and Kenway inserted a perforated steel plate on his body behind a mouth on the robot. A drawer popped out of the robot, which contained a food box for dinner. Really advanced. Ryan sighed. After all, he didn't even have a robot to deliver food in his last life. Dave deserves to be a genius. With these technologies, he can bring out so many new uses. After dinner, chatting for a while, Lane and Kenway said goodnight to each other and returned to the room early. After all, both men need to participate in the war tomorrow. The master bedroom has been empty here for Ryan. Ryan walked into the bedroom, only to find that the bed was covered with an assassin costume cut out according to his figure. This should be kind to Kenway, although Ryan feels a pity. After all, he grows up quickly at his age, but he can also use this as a template to get Diagon to ask someone to make a suit that can grow with age. Because this suit is most suitable for the power of Lane, it is far more convenient than Hogwarts school uniform. There is also an iron box on top of this outfit. When I opened it, I found that there was a gold-plated steel plate with holes. It was the same as the steel plate used by Kenway to take a meal. This should be the ID card made by Dave. Ryan installed the gold-plated steel plate, which was only a child's slap, and then practiced a spell for a while before going to bed because Ryan was a little excited because he was going to participate in a real war tomorrow. Fall asleep slowly. Early the next morning, Ryan got up early to wash, and then put on that assassin costume. It must be said that this professionally designed clothing is more conducive to sports and combat than ordinary clothing. After breakfast and farewell to Jennifer, Lane and Kenway went to the scheduled square together. It wasn't until Ryan discovered that the people preparing for the expedition had already assembled in the square. Probably because of population problems, the number of people going out this time is about 500, and each person has a robot as a substitute. To Ryan's surprise, the robot has a special cultivation tank in which a lot of plants are placed. It seems that these plants are weapons for combat. At this time, Dave finished his pre-war speech and went to Ryan and said to Ryan, "It used to be difficult for us to attack because the plants were unable to move. If we planted a little plants outside, the progress was too slow and the manpower was insufficient. Plus with the passage of time, most of the vehicles can no longer be used, and no mobile power can be organized at all, so there is no way to counterattack the zombies." Ryan asked a bit strangely, "This is only 500 people operating 500 robots, which is still thin compared to the thousands of zombies. Can this counterattack succeed?" "It's still thanks to the technology you sent," Dave said with some excitement. "Actually, there are 5,000 robots outside the town, and everyone just went to command the robots to fight. Since we have robots, we can cultivate more plants, while also giving plants unparalleled mobility. No wonder this group of combatants has men, women and children. On the one hand, it does not require melee combat and has very low physical requirements. On the other hand, there is now a shortage of population and we can only mobilize all the people who can be mobilized. So these plants and robots can be promoted so quickly, because humans are already so few." Ryan believes that in the future, Human civilization in this world will likely become a plant steampunk mixed-style civilization. Kenway set off with 5 people and 50 robots ahead of time. As scouts, they needed to find their way in front of the army. Dave invited him to ride the robot with him. Lane only found out that the doctor and his 100 robots were not the same as ordinary robots. Each robot has a 2-story height, much larger than the robots I saw in the square just now. They carry a huge iron box on their backs, and the pipes beside the iron boxes exude a trace of white steam. The steam discharged by so many robots makes the mist here make it look like a fairyland. Seeing Ryan's curious look, Dave explained, ordinary robots need to regularly replenish the high-temperature and high-pressure steam at a fixed amount, and their size cannot be installed in the boiler. So I invented this large robot, which can be imitated with the enemy. On the one hand, large zombie battles, on the other hand, they can afford boilers and replenish steam for other robots on the battlefield. Ryan expressed admiration for Dave, a mad scientist, who could actually learn so much technology in such a short period of time and make improvements, which is simply incredible. While speaking, the two climbed onto a large robot, and then joined the large army and began to advance to the predetermined battlefield. The goal of this battle is to create as much motion as possible in the suburbs of Luai City, to lure out the zombies in the urban area and completely destroy them in the field. In this way, you can easily occupy Luai City and obtain the necessary materials and industrial capacity for the next step. At the same time, you can also accommodate more people. The good news is that in the last time Ryan arrived in the war, the leader of the zombies in Luai City was annihilated along with many senior zombies when they attacked Dave's town. There are currently no heads of dragons in Luai City. Only a few senior zombies barely lead a large group of zombies acting instinctively. That's why Dave made a plan to lead the snake out of the hole, because there are too few high-level zombies. The control of the zombie group will be at an extremely inconvenient point. This steel army rolled forward and ran towards the city more than 30 kilometers away. Ryan was bored during the journey, and began to ask Dave some questions about the world. From Dave's answer, Ryan learned that the world might have been 5 or 6 years ahead of Ryan's previous life. Later, a meteorite fell, and some large consortia's research on the meteorite caused the spread of biochemical crisis. It's just that the meteorite also changed the world, making Dave lucky enough to cultivate these magical plants. But compared with the world of Ryan's last life, this world may not have had nuclear weapons due to different physical rules. For monsters such as zombies, conventional weapons are obviously less lethal to them, especially their variants. In addition, the biochemical crisis that year broke out very violently. Suddenly, humans also lack sufficient manpower to operate conventional weapons. On the side of zombies, there are only a few high-level zombies capable of manipulating weapons intelligently, and the remaining zombies can only do some simple activities. So now there is basically no room for conventional weapons to fight in this world, and the form of warfare has also become a vegetal versus zombie. Time passed slowly in the chat, and suddenly, Ryan felt that the giant robot stopped. The original preset battlefield has arrived, and war is about to erupt. Chapter 65, Real War. The preset terrain of the battlefield is excellent. A river flows from the left side of the battlefield. This river flows from the side of the valley town where they departed, and flows from the Green Leaf City to the sea. The river is very turbulent in this mountainous place, and only a small part of zombies can threaten the flanks from the river downstream. The right side of the battlefield is the remnant of the mountain. The rugged terrain limits the possibility of zombies attacking in groups. This time is a full dispatch of human beings. If they are unsuccessful, they will become benevolences. This is why Ryan saw that the people in this group were all old and weak, because fighting the zombies must be quick and quick. In the decisive battle, a full blow must not be delayed. Otherwise, every dead fighter will turn into a zombie force, and surely tactics will not work. At this time Kenway brought his men back. He said that in the vicinity of the suburbs, it is difficult to get in with too many zombies. There is really no way to further investigate the specific time of arrival of zombies. Ryan volunteered at this time to try to investigate. He and Kenway drove a robot to the nearest safe point from the city. After reaching a safe point, Ryan fully launched his new life magic. He immediately felt that there were a lot of filthy unnatural creatures in the whole city. He condensed his perception into a line and explored towards the city. Due to the new school of magic at his insufficient level, this perception has a distance limitation and is very vague, and it is impossible to distinguish specific units at all, but enough to perceive the distribution of zombies in a scanned piece. After learning that Ryan's scanning distance was limited, Kenway manipulated the robot to walk around the city. After going around the city, Ryan sketched the distribution of zombies in the city, and marked a few points in his perception that reacted more strongly than other zombies. Because there are high-level zombies, Lane thinks it is likely that all the scattered zombies around him will be attracted to the high-level zombies, because in his perception, the approximate number of zombies definitely exceeds the population of Luai City before the disaster. Back to the camp, Lane told Dave what he had detected. Dave listened to their report and quickly sent Kenway back to the town to get all the plants that could be used outside through the steamboat. After the order was given, Dave turned to Ryan to thank him for bringing the information. because the intelligence represents two good news and one bad news. The good news is that these zombies may not attack until 48 hours later, so that the human army has enough time to prepare the fortifications. The bad news is that after the last decapitation of the zombies, the left-behind senior zombies in Luai City attracted a large number of wandering zombies to strengthen themselves to survive this fragile stage. If this situation is not detected this time, it is likely that the human side will suffer a great loss. After that, it was construction time. The human side operated the robot to build high platforms and protective walls in the position, excavated a large number of trenches in front of the position, and attracted water from the river to flood the low-lying areas at the front of the position to make swamp delay zombie operations. After lunch, a steamship came from the direction of the town, and the ship was full of plants. Thanks to Kenway, an old captain, no one else could sail on such a fast river. Don't these plants have a combat mode? Why do you have to pull the plants from behind? Lane asked Dave, puzzled. It's very simple. Only in places with a lot of plants can plants enter combat mode. In this place, plants can't enter combat mode at all. I didn't expect that there are so many zombies. I also thought that only the plants on the robot can solve the problem. In this way, some plant seeds can be saved and used after regaining the green leaf market. Unfortunately, the current situation can only be deployed in this area to prepare for the worst. Not to mention the fact that the combat effectiveness of plants has decreased in combat mode. In residential areas, street fighting is fine. In this field situation, the original plants are more suitable. Finally, Dave distributed all the pots again and let each combatant bring them. Wait for less than half an hour after lunch at noon the next day, sitting in a tent to practice the magic of life left by Viking. A bell sounded on the platform, and Ryan ran out of the tent and ran up the protective wall, and found a green invisible zombie army walking towards the camp along the road before the disaster. Tens of thousands of zombies even covered the small plain in front of the position. Ryan could even see some particularly tall zombies staggered amongst a group of zombies. Fortunately, after the overnight construction of more than 5,000 robots, the human camp has built enough fortifications, and the front swamp and the camp are covered with potato mines. Torch stumps and various pea shooters are arranged in the trench, and a nut wall in front of the trench serves as a shield. Around the core of the camp was a circle of 7 or 8 meters high protective wall connected to a high platform of about 10 meters. The protective wall and the high platform are filled with various pitcher plants and corn cannons. The height gives them a longer range, which can cover the plants in the trenches to fight. In addition, robots filled with plants are operated by humans as a reserve team, ready to replenish the lack of firepower. Ryan's mission in combat is to fight with the reserve team at the forefront and provide Dave commanding the rear with changes to the zombies in the front to facilitate the adjustment of human power. Lin found that the morale of the human side is very high, because this is the first time they have launched a counterattack. As for the possible fear, the end of the world has been so many years. Fear has long been afraid. With a scream of screams from the zombies on the opposite side, the zombies swooped like a tide, and the war began. The first batch was just some cannon fodder zombies, which soon collapsed under the fire of plants. The following batches were only a slight increase in the number of zombies, and were eliminated when they did not encounter the trench. It seems that this should be a reconnaissance operation launched by senior zombies, but Ryan also found that the zombies' attacks were far less organized than the last time Ryan encountered. This may be because there are too few senior zombies, which makes them only rough of commanding zombies, which should be good news. Finally launched a threatening assault at the beginning of the fourth wave of zombie attacks. They used several eye-struck zombies as their assault spears, and a row of football zombies behind them. They rushed towards the human position. Because of their stronger defense, they suffered a loss and crossed the swamp area to reach the first trench. Seeing this situation, the reserve team that Ryan followed was also dispatched. They rushed to one of the zombie assault spears, preparing to eliminate this wave of zombies through the advanced plants equipped on the robot. Chapter 66, Real Warfare. When he arrived behind the nut wall in that place, Lane discovered that the zombie striker had been less than 50 meters away from here. Robots have lowered their center of gravity to prepare for plant attacks. Lion also took out his wand and prepared to release the spell. In the inheritance of the Viking wizard, the best tool for releasing spells is not a magic wand, but a cold weapon of a magic array, such as a battle axe, a spear or a sword, inlaid with gems like Niven. It's a pity that none of the above things are available to Ryan. There is no way he can only use the wand to barely count. Compared to those professional weapons, the wand lacks melee ability and has an excellent amplification effect for these combat magic. But the advantage is that the price is lower and the scope of application is wider. For example, if the same combat magic is cast, the magic weapon used as a casting tool can even exert more than twice the magic wand's casting effect. But the price paid is that such a weapon is at least 3 to 5 times the price of the magic wand, and it needs to be tailored. The most important thing is that this weapon can't do anything except combat. You can't rely on them to make potions or clean up your home. Even when casting a magic that is not purely for combat, it is not as effective as a wand. Ryan thinks this may also be the reason why these magic weapons finally withdrew from the stage of history. After all, It is not only a matter of fighting when people are alive. Soon the zombies entered the range, and the robots on the human side began to pour firepower towards them. Ryan also waved his wand to release magic. The experiment started with some ordinary magic, but unfortunately the coma curse is not useful for the dead. At most, they will repel them a little, and within a few seconds they will stand up and continue to move forward. It is useful to imprison quickly, but it seems so incompetent when facing the sea of zombies, and it is only useful when dealing with a single zombie. And some other spells are basically useless, such as Torn Apart and Broken Bones, which can only play a role in a zombie body that has fallen down and disappeared. If you use a fire spell to deal with zombies, the lit zombies will not burn in the while. Zombies advancing with flames will cause more trouble to humans. Finally, Ryan began to use his newly acquired ancient Viking life magic to fight against these zombies. He raised his wand and drew a semicircle, then read the mantra in ancient Viking language. Uncleanness returns to silence. A pale ray shot from the top of Ryan's wand and hit a zombie wearing a rugby uniform. The heavy football protective clothing did not bring any defense to him, and the moment the light hit it, the zombies turned into a pile of ashes, leaving only one football costume to fall to the ground. Seeing that the spell is so easy to use, Ryan started to shoot the football-like zombies that were more difficult to knock down. Some spells accidentally hit the plant during the battle, but as is known from the heritage, these magics have no lethal effect on non-evil creatures. Since there is no need to worry about accidental injuries, Ryan's attack frequency is greatly increased. Especially after the comrades exploded the ice cart zombie in front of the cover, Lane's spell reduced a lot of pressure for the comrades. Originally comrades were not too happy to let the little kid Ryan join this team, especially when he saw that he did not command any robot. Think he just came to pure chaos. It's just that as the leader Dave's order they can't quit. Now after seeing the magical power of Ryan, they began to actively cooperate with Ryan, constantly reporting the direction of one special zombie after another to indicate the direction of attack for Ryan. After more than 10 minutes of fighting, this part of the zombie was completely wiped out. Thankfully, not much was lost in the high nut wall. Ryan and his team took advantage of the next wave of zombies that had not yet arrived and began to walk out of the protective wall to replenish potato mines on the ground. The sound of corn cannons rang behind him, and Dave blocked the battlefield with strong firepower, and bought enough time for Ryan and their frontline personnel. The war spent hours in this tug of war. Even if it was dark, the zombies still attacked in waves. Lion can only rely on the robot to eat some dry food and drink some water when the zombies attack. Then squint in turn with the teammates for a while. Lane found that the number of attacking zombies was far more than the number of investigations at that time, but fortunately, the batch of investigation balloons released by Dave detected many places by night. Although he was still shot down in the end, he obtained valuable investigation results. The results of the investigation showed that the zombies concentrated the power of the green leaf plane. This means that the zombie power will be 3 times as expected. The good news is that once they are completely eliminated, the entire leafy plane will be within easy reach. This news shocked everyone on the front line, especially in the second half of the night. Kenway took the risk of sailing in the night again, bringing backup plants and robots to the position. These substantive backups greatly inspired everyone's morale. In the early morning of the next day, the rising sun sprayed the golden sunlight to the battlefield. The battlefield was a mess, and the limbs of the zombies were covered with the whole land. Lin's eyes were bloodshot, and his teammates were drinking hot coffee just around the robot's radiator. From 4 o'clock in the morning, the zombies' attacks suddenly stopped every half an hour. Only some ghost zombies were thrown in as harassment, and the pressure across the board suddenly lightened. However, Ryan and his teammates did not relax their vigilance. They felt this seemed to be the silence before the storm, and the final decisive battle may erupt at any time. As soon as he finished the cold sandwich with his hot coffee, the group of zombies opposite uttered a huge scream. The turquoise body came like a sea tide. Ryan saw a variety of zombies mixed up and rushed towards this side. It seems that the zombies chose a wave of assaults, hoping to output the largest attack in such a short time. Apply strong pressure to defeat humans who have been exhausted for a day. Dozens of corn cannons on the high platform fired first, and then the whizzing sounds of flying in the air and the explosion sound after touching the ground rang one after another. The group of zombies is even more chaotic, especially the huge giant zombies fall one after another, making the frontline pressure greatly reduced. Subsequently, various pitcher plants also issued their attacks, flying in the air with watermelon, frozen watermelon, cabbage corn kernels and butter. These attacks, like peeling onions, weakened a large group of zombies layer by layer. But the zombies in the back still ignored them and stepped on the body of the companion to continue to rush towards the human position. Lane stood on a robot, looking at the swarm of corpses with a serious look. He clenched his wand to prepare for the final round of battle. Chapter 67, The End of the Real War. Lane watched the zombies rushing in like a tide, leveled the roadblocks that had been scattered, and also used some sacrifices to eliminate all the potato mines in front of the position. Around 20 meters away from the high nut wall, a group of giant zombies came out from behind the group. Even impatiently stepped directly on the ordinary zombies who were standing in front of them. These zombies are different from the common giant zombies. They are bigger. They also put together a set of armor with debris such as car parts and house components, which has weakened the attack of the plants a lot. Lin tried to attack these giant zombies with unclean return, but unfortunately they have thick skin and a certain magical defense ability. Each magic hits them only to form a small gray area. Lin tried to focus on attacking the leg of a giant zombie, although multiple attacks left a large grayish mark on the zombie's leg, making the giant zombie slow to move. However, after discovering the reason for his slow movement, the zombie just grabbed the piece of meat with his paws, and then acted as usual. There is already a team next to 1 or 2 giant zombies to fall through concentrated firepower, but the zombies behind will immediately fill up the vacancies. Looking at him with their huge bodies rushing towards them, Ryan knew it was not time to keep his hands. He drew a tube of psychedelic mushroom spore powder from the belt around his waist and sprinkled it into the air in front of him. Then he pointed a giant zombie with a wand and drew a figure in the air. Then he read it in ancient Viking language. Deter filth. Lane's wand traced through the spore powder was quickly lit by the flame as the sound of the spell fell. Formed as an Apali letter is composed of pale flames. The simplest meaning of this letter is ice. A further sense reflects that snow is beautiful, delicate and beautiful. But it is also deceptive and may be an obstacle. In a deep sense, it represents a possible delay in planning. Passion has cooled, but it can also mean that anger has subsided. This letter made of flames quickly turned into a ping-pong-sized ball of light and flew to the giant zombies with the command of Ryan. Upon encountering 3 giant zombies gathered together, the ball of light exploded. They turned into a white mist that enveloped them. These mists quickly penetrated into the bodies of giant zombies and other zombies around them, and these zombies were immediately there. After a few seconds, they turned around and started attacking other zombies around them. Due to the sudden mutiny of these zombies, this group of zombies is chaotic. The attack strength of the zombies immediately stagnate. Ryan's teammates quickly pulled the seemingly weak Ryan onto the robot, and then instructed the robot and the surrounding plants to increase firepower while the zombies were chaotic, hoping to eliminate as many zombies as possible. Although everyone is fighting hard, there are too many zombies coming up. After all, the zombies are out of the nest this time, and their number far exceeds that of humans. A few minutes later Ryan felt that he was recovering almost, and orders came from the camp. Let the frontline teams abandon the nuts wall and retreat to the back of the trench. Because the offensive of the zombie legion was so violent that a large number of Imperial zombies were thrown through the nut wall, causing a lot of chaos in the rear. The main zombies in front of them are attacking the nut wall while the teams are overwhelmed. They are like green waves. They constantly slap the obstacles in front of them. Many nut walls have been destroyed. Many unmanned robots' losses also occur when loopholes are blocked. Therefore, the commander of the camp decided to shrink his troops for better defense. Under the cover of cherry bombs and hot peppers, Ryan and their squad successfully retreated to the trench area to rebuild their positions. The unguarded nut wall was quickly destroyed. Although the plants everywhere were struggling to attack, Lane also saw a large number of zombies falling every second. However, the momentum of the fully attacked zombie is still strong, and several trenches in the front that were used for delay are quickly filled with the bodies of the fallen zombies, and the original appearance cannot be seen at all. Their zombies attacked fiercely for a while. Most of the zombies suffered heavy casualties on the way to attack the human position. The firepower of various plants constituted a dense firepower network, constituting a war symphony. Ryan continuously releases various magic attacks on the powerful zombies that have been mutated, although in the process he has experienced many situations of collapse. But after falling down every time, he got up and continued to release magic to help his comrades. Ryan felt that his magic level was rising rapidly during this process, and even the release rate of the commonly used spells in several battles had been doubled. At the same time, he has accumulated a lot of magic combat experience. Ryan feels that his current combat experience should be even richer than many civilian officials of the Ministry of Magic. Finally, in the afternoon, the advanced zombies who commanded behind could not stand the status quo without progress. Under the protection of a group of guarded giant zombies, they reached the front line, hoping to completely break through the human defense line with the help of guards and their own powerful forces. You reading www.uukanzu.com. Zombies are zombies. Even if advanced zombies have some intelligence, they are not as good as humans think. After finding that the senior commander zombies reached the front line, the hidden corn cannon that was quickly spawned in the battle mode began to fire quickly at the location where the senior zombies were. At the same time, several weak points left in advance on the defensive walls were opened. Dave took his giant robot department and swooped towards the location of the high-level zombie. The nearby combat teams also rushed to Dave in order to he cleared the obstacles in front of him. Lean's squad also integrated into this large force. He saw that the zombie groups stacked in front of the senior zombies were about to collide with the robot forces. At this time, it was too late to open the bottle slowly to pick up things. Ryan grabbed the glass bottle and hit the steel parts on the robot. Snapped. The glass bottle broke. Ryan couldn't care about the glass inside, reached out his left hand and grabbed the sharp crystals of the sunlight, while pointing the zombie front in ancient Viking language and pronounced the mantra, "Sunshine is dirty." A representative of the light, like Nivenkin, floated out on Ryan's hand clinging to the crystallization of the sun, and then turned into a small sun emitting soft sunlight. Lane tried to raise his left arm to aim at the front line. After being exposed to this sunlight, humans felt warm and refreshed. On the contrary, the zombies were injured by the bright power contained in the sunlight, and had to give up the human army that smashed me to resist the charge. Cover the fragile parts of your body with your arms to avoid deeper injuries. This also provided great help for the assault of human forces. Finally they broke through the layers of protective circles of zombies and came to the senior zombies as commanders. The final decisive battle is about to begin, with victory or defeat in one fell swoop. Chapter 68. The End of the Real War. Lin found that the senior zombies commanded were about the same size as ordinary zombies, sitting in the seats on the backs of giant zombies that were one lap larger than normal giant zombies. In the face of the status quo that humanity has rushed to, it is crazy to command zombies to return. Unfortunately, the plants capable of long-range attacks struck out an isolation zone, so that the surrounding zombies could not support it for a while. The giant robot commanded by Dave quickly entangled with these zombies. The giant robots fixed the giant zombies, and then the plants on the body madly output. Ryan was not idle at this time, and began to use the magic to shoot high-level zombies commanded. However, he found that those advanced zombies have magic resistance. Even if the targeted ancient life magic is unclean, it can only make the opponent's movements pause a little. So Ryan decided to do his best to cooperate with other people to assist. He saw a giant zombie trapped by a giant robot, and the senior zombie sitting on it was ready to escape. Ryan released the uncleanness at the zombie. Just when it paused, Ryan's comrades drove up the robot and completely burned the zombie with the dragon grass on the robot. Before the two men nodded, Ryan hooked a robot with his claws and quickly swung to the other direction. He threw an armor body onto a warrior who accidentally dropped the robot during the battle, helping him block a zombie's lap. On the battlefield, everyone is trying their best to cooperate with their comrades and try to eliminate the enemy. After less than 10 minutes of fierce fighting, humans completely wiped out the high-level zombies who served as commanders in the zombie army. When the last high-level zombie was completely crushed by a giant robot, Lane knew that the war had won. Sure enough, the command of the high-level zombies was lost, and the other zombies returned to the aimless wandering state. Although the life force of human beings can still attract them to come, there is no longer an attack that brings great pressure under the condition of the command just now. Zombies without command are a group of gangsters, which are soon wiped out by humans. When the sun was about to set, the war was completely over. In the post-war statistics, an army of more than 700 humans and more than 5,000 robots carrying a large number of magical plants completely wiped out more than 100,000 zombies on the leafy plains where Luai is located. But the price paid is that although no one died, at least 10 people will be permanently disabled. Half of the robots were destroyed, especially giant robots survived. Only 1/10 has lost half of the most important plants, and almost all plants used in close combat have been lost. In addition, the materials that had been hoarded for a long time were basically consumed, and humans lost their offensive ability for at least 6 months. However, the harvest is also very large. After acquiring the Green Leaf City of the Sea, the human side has finally regained basic industrial capabilities, to know that in order to make up these 5,000 robots, the town has already consumed almost all the steel it can find, including several steel warehouses before the disaster and a train with multiple trains abandoned train station. Thanks to a series of unscientific plants that do not need fuel when making steel. Otherwise, there may not be so many robots. Now has enough land to develop industry and grow plants. As long as you patiently develop for a while, humanity will inevitably become the ruler of this world again. Because it was completely dark, they did not enter the city due to safety issues. In line with the practice of the ancient Viking wizard, Ryan directed the robot to build an altar on the battlefield, and resolve the grievances of the zombies here through ancient ceremonies. Liberate and purify the souls of those unfortunate who are trapped in rotting flesh. As Ryan stood on the altar and continued to wave his wand to sing a spell in Old Viking, a little silver light emerged from the fallen zombie, forming a vague translucent soul in the air. In the chanting, the ghost's expression slowly calmed down, and finally bowed to Lane on the altar and disappeared into smoke. This purification ritual lasted all night before it was over. Fortunately, these are only zombies, and the strength is reflected in the flesh. After destroying the body, the soul strength is even lower than that of ordinary people. In the case of wraiths, this ritual is not only troublesome but also dangerous. Others also saw the ghosts in the sky, and some even saw their relatives and friends, and wept silently. Early the next morning, Ryan discovered that everyone in the camp looked at him with more awe and gratitude. After cleaning up, everyone started like Luai City, and people who recovered completely at noon went to Luai City. After cleaning up the individual zombies remaining in the city of Green Leaf, Lane and Dave bid farewell to Kenway on the pier driving a steam-powered sailboat. This is part of the reconstruction plan. Kenway will go to the surrounding islands to search for survivors. Watching Fanny go away, Dave turned his head and said to Ryan, Dave thinks his friend is going home soon. Yeah, Ryan said, the things to do this time have been done. I really should go home. I will look for the medicine next time I come. Maybe I can make those disabled soldiers go again. Stand up. Thank you for your help this time. At least you have killed a lot of tricky guys and saved a lot of people with magic. Now every person who lives in this era has more hope. After finishing, Dave patted Ryan's shoulder and motioned Blue to follow him. When walked to the river, Lane discovered that a steamship was coming from upstream with a large number of parts. I will cover the second energy tower in this city. After all, the original town is suitable for refuge. But if you want to develop it, the space is seriously insufficient. Dave pointed to the steamship and said to Ryan. Afterwards, he pointed to a high ground near the river, where a large number of robots were busy, as if something was under construction. Because there are few people now, in order to prevent the zombies' counterattack, Dave decided to build a giant fortress that can hold everyone here to ensure safety. Since then, it will be our base, and the materials will be obtained from the city first. Came to the construction site, Ryan carefully observed the building materials, and found that many of them were indeed disassembled directly from the buildings in the city. It seems that for safety, the city needs to be sacrificed temporarily. Dave walked into a small room that had just been built, and when he came out, he held a laptop, a mobile hard disk and a bag of seeds. This is a gift I gave you. In addition to my life's experience and notes, there are some seeds. This is what you deserve. In addition to this, there is a large farm to be given to you. Thank you for our world. Contribution made, Dave said with a rare serious look holding Ryan's hand. Thank you. I also got a lot from you. I think the next time I come, I should be able to see a beautiful world. Ryan also shook Dave's hand firmly after speaking, and then stepped back to open the space-time door. After waving goodbye to Dave, he left the world. Chapter 69, The Last Time of Summer Vacation. After returning to Wanji grocery store, Ryan received the system information. Further change the destiny of the world. Gain 30 offset points at this stage. Acquire medium-sized planting base, large farm. The prestige of Plants vs. Zombies world meets the requirements, and the space-time door can be opened outside the store after paying a certain price. Under the non-combat situation, you can directly and remotely trade with the designated friendly personnel of the world in the main world. Now you can trade two people, Dave and Kenway. Then Ryan's laptop and the mobile hard disk flew to the shelf and turned into two black books. They wrote Crazy Dave's Guide to Deep Plant Cultivation and Crazy Dave's Ultimate Plant Cultivation Guide. These two books need to pay 5 and 9 offset points respectively, and Ryan chose to study immediately. This time he found that in addition to the installation of knowledge, he also made Ryan's temperament change and became closer to the plant. No wonder the Ultimate Guide is so expensive, because it involves the injection of some extraordinary powers. The power of the Ultimate Guide greatly improves the level and efficiency of plant breeding in Ryan. The remaining 41 offset points can also deal with various problems that may arise in the future. The last bag contains some seeds, namely torch stump, energy coffee beans, pumpkin, spray mushrooms and frozen peas. This allowed Lane's plant Lijian to add new members so that it could cope with more diverse situations. Count the loot. Lion nodded with satisfaction, opened the door of time and space and returned to his own world. Went back to his bedroom, and Ryan felt as if he had passed by. After going through such a fierce war, I went home and found that only 1 hour passed. That weird feeling makes people feel a little uncomfortable. So Ryan chose to go to bed immediately and sleep, hoping to adjust himself through sleep. Others may hurt themselves. This is really a lucky thing. Woke up early the next day. Only when Ryan got into the Wanji grocery store experiment, he discovered that his level of using magic has improved a lot. However, after accepting Dave's inheritance on the plant, he found that the plant he had cultivated had many defects, and he had to spend a lot of time to take various remedies to solve the problem. Ryan estimated that this new plant should really be able to grow soon after he started school, and really looked forward to its birth. And the biggest gain this time was the thorough assimilation of the assassin's heritage and the ancient Viking wizard inheritance from Iceland. Now he can already skillfully use his current power level. The only thing left is to master the watermilling skills slowly as the strength increases. This made Ryan suddenly have an ability in hand. I have the illusion of the world. But think about the next year. The opponent is a basilisk with a bigger head than the door, and the little pride that Ryan just emerged disappeared immediately, because he found that the life magic he mastered was very difficult to fight the giant twisted creatures that were only naturally resistant. If faced with a basilisk, first of all, the basilisk is at least a living dark creature, so life magic is not so restrained by it. Secondly, the basilisk is a pet of Slytherin. Ryan can bet that it must have countless professional magic defenses. Not to mention that the guy has been alive for more than 1,000 years, and the power that years brings to it will definitely not be that simple. Not to mention the use of assassin technology to fight with the basilisk. Ryan even suspected that the sword could not pierce that layer of leather at all. Not to mention the size of the gadget, there is no difference between taking a sleeve sword to attack and taking a needle to stab an elephant. So Ryan felt that he needed to spend some time to find a reliable way to solve the problem of this basilisk. Because of the nervous tension caused by the war, Ryan decided to be honest as an ordinary student during the summer vacation, soothing his nerves. Fortunately, his soul age is not a real child, otherwise it may really leave a permanent shadow in his heart. Ryan couldn't help but be thankful. It's just that it's a little scary to discuss with Hermione 3 or 4 times a week, and the knowledge preview for the next academic year. This feeling of pretending to be a school tycoon but encountering a real school tycoon is endless. This also forced Ryan to have to study in advance to avoid showing his feet in front of the real school bully Hermione. Although Ryan feels that his actual combat ability can't beat him with 3 Hermione tied, but a sharpshooter does not mean that he is also a master in the theory of gun manufacturing. More than a week before the start of school, Ryan and they still did not receive any news from Harry, which made them a little worried. One day Ryan and Hermione were reading in the library. With a sudden touch, something like a grey feather duster leaned against their windows and ran down the window to the ground. Oh, Ryan recognized that this was the owl of the Ron family, so he and Hermione ran out quickly. When they walked under the window, they found it was Errol. It had passed out with a letter. It's pitiful. Hermione shook her head and let Ryan hug the owl, and then she opened the letter and read it. In the letter Ron wrote that they would go to Harry's house to see what happened, and maybe Harry could be taken out. I hope they don't do anything illegal, Hermione said. Then she walked to the bench in the street center and sat down. Take out a piece of paper and start writing back to Ron. At this time Errol also woke up. Ryan hid it in his school bag, and later bought chicken without any seasoning in a small restaurant on the street and asked for a glass of water. By the time Ryan returned to Jackson Park, Hermione had almost finished writing the letter. Ryan poured Errol out of his school bag, shredded the roast chicken and fed it with water. After eating a bunch of chicken, Errol finally recovered almost. Hermione also handed over the letter to Errol and asked it to send it to Ron. Lane looked at Errol, who was holding a letter, and fluttered, praying silently for it. Hope it can fly home safely. 2 days later, Ryan received a letter from the school. On the parchment, he wrote a full page of the school yearbook list. The first look at Ryan thought that Hogwarts asked for a few years at a time all the books are bought. Most of the Professor's books are fine, except that the Flower Peacock Lockhart requires more bibliographies than the total number of others. Lockhart is indeed a star, especially in this super boring magic world. His adventure novel is one of the few entertainments for wizards. Even better, he made his novel more real. At the risk of his life, he constantly obtains first-hand information from the adventurers of the wizarding world. People who can take risks are not low in combat effectiveness. Lockhart can attack them with a forgetting spell and never misses. This shows that Lockhart also has his own ability. Although Ryan knew that Lockhart worked so hard to become an idol, the thought of those big and expensive novels that Lockhart demanded that everyone must buy in full, and more importantly, these novels would definitely become garbage. After the year passed, Ryan was filled with indignation at Lockhart. Chapter 70, New Year's Diagon Alley. It was the last Wednesday of the holiday. The Grangers and his wife drove Lane and their daughter to Diagon Alley for shopping. Because Ryan's mother is going to work, and his father claims to have a brilliant idea to quickly open a new book and easily release Ryan's pigeons, Ryan discovered that after coming to this world, although this world is not much different from the world in which it was originally located, it still has changed in many small places. For example, many original world-famous literary works have become similar works by other authors in this world, and some have never appeared. It's just that Ryan couldn't remember the specific content of the book he had originally read, and he didn't have time to copy it. So during family chats, Ryan told his father, Mr. Lambert, some of the works he remembered that had never appeared in this world. Maybe stimulated by these brain holes and the fact that the world has magic, Mr. Lambert decided to change his writing style this time to write a magic epic masterpiece. Therefore, Mr. Lambert, who wrote The Retreat, gave Ryan to the Grangers and asked them to take Ryan to shop. According to Ryan's point of view, Hermione's parents are standard cultural people, polite. In particular, Mr. Granger was actually a fan of Daddy Ryan's book, which made a lot of common topics in the car along the way. On Diagon Alley, Ryan and Hermione decided to go to Gilling Pavilion first to exchange money. Just stepping on the white marble steps of Gilling Pavilion, Hagrid walked over with Harry. Hey, Harry sighed. Harry looked up and saw Ryan and Hermione standing on the white steps of the Gilling Pavilion. Ryan greeted Harry while walking down the steps with Hermione. Are you going camping? How dirty, Hagrid. Oh, it's so nice to see you two again. Are you going to Gilling Pavilion now, Harry? I will go after I find the Weasleys, Harry said. You don't have to find long. Hagrid smiled. Soon the Weasley family appeared, and the twins and Ron expressed their envy for Harry's adventure in Knockdown Lane. Taking advantage of the Weasleys and Harry's greetings, Lane handed Fred a small pocket. What are you doing, Ryan? Ron asked after seeing their transaction. You know I went to Iceland during the summer vacation, and your brothers asked me to bring some local specialties to them," Lane replied. As they walked up the steps of the Gulling Pavilion together, Harry told Ryan that they had met Malfoy and his son at the black magic shop. Mr. Weasley, who was following, felt that he should grab evidence of Malfoy's black magic. Then he argued with Mrs. Weasley, who advised him to be the first to be safe. Soon Mr. Weasley's attention was diverted, and he greeted the Grangers and the couple standing in the hall. It seemed that Mr. Weasley was a good person who was very passionate about moles, but the Grangers were a little bit uncomfortable with this passion. Then the two sides said goodbye temporarily. The Weasleys and Harry were going to the underground vault to withdraw money, while Lane and Hermione exchanged money in the lobby. This year's quota for everyone is 250 gallons, because Hogwarts textbook fees have increased this year, the goblin said to them a little impatiently. Probably he said this many times today. Wait for Harry to come out, and everyone meets for an hour and gathers at Lijian Bookstore. After that, he entered free shopping time. They strolled on the cobblestone street, browsed the colorful goods on the street, and ate a large piece of nut cream ice cream by the way. They saw the Weasley twins and Lee Jordan buying large amounts of fireworks. Later, Hermione pulled to buy parchment and ink. Lene is going to the thrift store to find out if there are any useful old books. Hermione was also eager to try this kind of Taobao behavior after seeing the 1893 edition of Making 100 Common Potions by Lane. Unfortunately, Harry and Ron were not interested in this, so they broke up with Ryan and went to the Quidditch boutique. Knowledge is so useful, but why do they think the barbaric sport flying on a broomstick is more interesting? Hermione said a little puzzled. You know, they all have the family inheritance of this sport. Besides, it is only a small group of people who enjoy reading books after all, Ryan said as she opened the shop door, turning her head to Hermione. After entering the door, they found Percy Weasley was concentrating on a very boring book. How does the commander gain power? Ryan looked at the page after turning to read about the professions the seniors were engaged in after they left school. Looked at Ryan staring at his book curiously, and Percy closed the book a bit embarrassed and greeted Ryan. In fact, Percy and Ryan had a good relationship with Hermione, especially when they organized collective work. Percy provided a lot of help. The content of this book is too simple, Ryan said disdainfully. But think about it, the magic world is so big, and there is no need for a subtle political skill. You reading www.uukanzu.com. I think it's written very well. Why do you think it is crude? Percy asked curiously. As can be seen from his expression, he felt that Ryan didn't understand at this age and should just be talking nonsense. I recommend you to see the Zizi-Tongujian of the Tang Dynasty. This is a book written to the Emperor by a prime minister from the Tang Dynasty more than 1,000 years ago. It contains a case that is much higher than the level in this book. I remember someone who wrote this book translated into English. Percy was really interested. He even asked Lane to write the name of the book in Chinese, and said that he might go to Chinatown to find the book. After sending away a little excited Percy, Ryan and Hermione started rummaging through the pile of old books. Most of the masters just scribbled on the old books, and even had a book that might be soaked in some potion to give an unpleasant smell. It may be that the novice luck is generally very good, and finally Hermione found a useful book, which is a Ravenclaw student's notes on the mantra. She thinks that some knowledge on it is very useful. At checkout, Hermione said to Ryan, I used to think that these second-hand books were provided to people with financial problems, and they had no advantages other than being cheap. Thanks to you for letting me know that there are still predecessors left behind valuable knowledge. Lane smiled, and valuables were sometimes hidden in second-hand used goods. This is the experience he obtained when he used to buy second-hand goods in his free life. For Hermione, who has a good family and never needs to buy second-hand goods for economic reasons, it is a very new theory, especially when she took out gold from a lot of garbage. The joy of harvesting was definitely never experienced. After checking out, Ryan pulled out his pocket watch and found that the appointment time was coming, so he and Hermione ran to the Lijian Bookstore. Chapter 71, Lijian Bookstore. Arrived at the door of Lijian Bookstore, and they discovered that the bookstore was full of people. The banner on the store door says that it is Lockhart's new bookmark sale today. This is much more fanatical than Daddy fans, Ryan murmured to a large crowd of middle-aged witches. We can see him in person, Hermione said to Ryan. After all, almost all the books on the list are written by him. He may be really powerful, but the act of using the novel as a textbook is a bit too. What you said makes sense. Mr. Lambert's novels are not bad, but they can never be used as textbooks. Hermione seemed to be awake. Lane saw Harry and Ron standing in front of the team holding the book and waiting for the signature, while Mrs. Weasley sorted her hair a little nervously at the end, and Ginny followed her. Of course, when Ryan and Hermione came to Mrs. Weasley, they heard Mrs. Weasley whispered to Ginny, "Oh, sorry, dear. Most of the things can only be bought for you, because Lockhart's novel's not cheap." It doesn't matter, Mom, textbooks are still very important. I don't mind these, Ginny also whispered. At this time, a group of people squeezed over and squeezed Ryan to the door, and the twins came right outside the door. Ryan said to the twins, "How am I bringing things this time, right?" "Something is fine," Fred said. "But can the payment be paid to you later?" Recently, I have a little tight hands. George continued. It's okay, when I have the money to pay me. It's just that I think your family is a bit patriarchal. Ron had new robes when he went to school last year. Why did Ginny buy her a girl this year? Old robe. Hey, it's not because of Lockhart's new book. We are going to buy 5 sets in one go, so we can only buy old robes for Ginny. That's why the payment for you is a bit late. We want to give Ginny send a few new quills and ink. Wait, why do you want 5 sets of books? Ryan asked. There are 5 people in our family going to school, of course, 5 sets of books. Fred said. No, I mean, since all the books you need this year are the same. You are not in the same grade, and you will not take the Black Magic Defense class at the same time. Why don't you brothers exchange each other? Just take notes and take a notebook. That's enough for 1 or 2 sets of books, Ryan said as he looked at the twins. Yeah, why didn't we think of it? The twins looked at each other and squeezed into the store desperately, looking to find their mother. Ryan stood in front of the store and saw Lockhart hugging Harry to take pictures and rub the heat. This is exactly the same as taking a photo with the U2 band when he met the members of the U2 band at the signing meeting of Lane's father, Mr. Lambert. No wonder Lockhart can have so many fans. This level of operator set is close to the online hype team decades later. It can be said that it is decades ahead of the times. Not to mention that Lockhart is really handsome. If you don't know that he is a straw bale, it's really easy to be charmed by him. Ryan couldn't help but squeeze into the shop and saw the famous scene of Harry's sister. He put a whole set of Lockhart's new novels in Ginny's crucible. It was followed by a fight between Mr. Malfoy and Mr. Weasley caused by personal grievances. In this chaos, Ryan took the Grangers to a safe corner of the bookstore to avoid the chaos. Standing around the corner, Mr. Granger asked with a little worry, is the wizarding world always so chaotic, and is that kind of discrimination common? Ryan knew that they were worried about her daughter's life here, so she said with relief, this kind of racist-like person is not too much, and knowledge in the wizarding world is equal to strength. Hermione learns well, so generally no one provokes her. After listening to Ryan's explanation, Mr. Granger seemed relieved. At this time, the fight between Weasley and Malfoy was stopped by Hagrid. Ryan and Granger and the 3 of them also walked out of the bookstore with the flow of people. Mrs. Granger still looked a little scared, and Mr. Granger had been comforting her by the side. At the door, Ryan met the Weasleys and Hermione. Hermione quickly ran up to ask her parents and thanked Ryan. Thank you for helping me comfort my parents. I'm really scared that they are too worried about me because they see these. No need to thank, we are friends, Lane replied. After a group of people walked to the location of the broken cauldron, Ryan deliberately fell at the end and walked with Ginny. Then she pretended to have just discovered the old book in Ginny's crucible and said to her, do you also appreciate the knowledge contained in the old book? Ginny was startled and turned her head to look at Ryan. She recognized Ryan as a friend of his brother's. Hello, my name is Ryan Liang. You can call me Ryan. Every time I come to Diagon Alley, I will look for various old books with interesting or useful notes in the second-hand goods store. I have gained a lot of useful knowledge from it. It's just that this kind of behavior is generally not understood by others, so today I read that you bought old books, so I came here to find the same kind of friends. I am sorry if it bothers you. I know you. Ginny raised her head and said, Ron said that you were second in the grade last year and one of his best friends also told me that I didn't understand you clearly money to buy new books. Why go to the old bookstore and toss and go? After that, Ryan and Ginny chatted for a while. When he was about to break the cauldron bar, Ryan patted his forehead and said, you are going to Hogwarts to go to school this year. I should give you a gift as a friend of your brother. After finishing speaking, he took out the old notebook he had prepared in advance from his back pocket and gave it to Ginny. This is my notes. I hope to help you. Ginny took the gift happily and put it in the crucible. At this time, Ryan saw the black notebook in the shabby textbook of Metamorphosis in Ginny's crucible. He pointed to the book and pretended to be surprised, saying, God, you have started to take notes before you go to school. It's amazing. Ginny took out the book and looked at it, then shook her head and said, this doesn't seem to be my notebook. Then I opened it, and there was nothing in it. Lane looked at the faded date on the cover of the notebook to show that it was 50 years ago. On the first page, only one name recognized in obscure ink, Tom Riddle. The back cover is printed with the name of a newspaper dealer in Vauxhall Road, London, which looks like an antique notebook. Who is Tom Riddle? Ginny said curiously. It may be that the people at the thrift store did not look at the book carefully. Seeing Ryan staring at the notebook intently, Ginny handed the notebook to Ryan and said, since you like it, I will give it to you, and I will receive your gift in return. Ryan expressed gratitude and put the book in the school bag, and told Ginny that this ordinary notebook 50 years ago was still so well preserved. It was rare for him to give this to his father who likes antiques. Chapter 72, Back to School Time. At the Broken Cauldron Bar, everyone waved goodbye and made an appointment to meet on the platform on September 1st. Mr. Weasley seemed eager to try and ask Mr. Granger what, but was pulled back by Mrs. Weasley. The Weasleys and Harry went home through the fireplace, while Lane and the Grangers went home by car. On the way back, there was silence in the car. When the car stopped at the door of Hermione's house, Ryan took things out of the trunk and bid farewell to the Grangers and was about to go home. Hermione caught Ryan in the first 2 steps. After seeing Mr. Granger holding Mrs. Granger into the house, Hermione whispered to Ryan, "After returning to school, can you teach me how to fight with magic? I think you are learning this for a holiday." "Why? I remember that you have been a little repulsive in fighting before, and told me a few days ago that it is not time to learn fighting," Ryan said in surprise after hearing Hermione's request. "Because in today's bookstore, when you fight Mr. Weasley and Malfoy, only you think of pulling my parents to a safe place. I only found that there are not many good people like Mr. Weasley. Most people alright magicians have a certain prejudice, or disregard. Not to mention that both the Malfoy family and the Weasley family have a lot of energy in the magic world. Therefore, the general conflict between them will not be enlarged, and there will be no major harm, and the mole background like us may only rely on their own strength to avoid harm. At least I don't think Malfoy will have some scruples and release his hand when we release the curse. So you are right, we need to protect ourselves, protect our relatives and friends. I believe you have learned something related to combat during the summer vacation. Would you like to share this knowledge with me?" "No problem," Ryan promised. "I can share this knowledge with you when I return to school." After saying goodbye to Hermione, Ryan dragged his box back and thought about what Hermione said at last. Sure enough, Hermione is a smart man, Ryan thought. If I hadn't read many analyses in my previous life, and my psychological age was more than 30 years old, I would never have thought of this direction. At least in the overall situation of the British magic world, Muzz and wizards are not regarded as equal. For example, Hagrid violated the rules to allow a pigtail to grow on Dudley's butt, but was never punished for it. A wizard with equality, such as Mr. Weasley, but it is regarded as alien in the magic world. Therefore, if a wizard born of Mull wants to live a normal life in the magic world, then more work must be done to improve his strength. Hermione can think of this at this age, but she can only say that she is talented. After returning home, Ryan took out the diary as a Voldemort Horcrux. The life magic can obviously feel that there is an evil in it and twists life. Lijian thought for a while, put a diary box in a metal box and threw it into the Wanji grocery store. In this way, it should be possible to safely bring this book to the school without touching people. Originally planned to use the newly learned life magic to see if he could destroy this book, but when he found that the danger of this thing was far beyond his imagination, he could only choose to admit it. Here he has to admire Voldemort's genius, who can make such dangerous items in his student years through self-study, which can only be described as powerful. Lijian also found the distance between himself and the final boss behind the scenes. It seems that he still can't be complacent and still need to get more power through the Wanji grocery store. The rest of the holiday was calm, and his father Mr. Lambert had been closed. He declared that he would write a great novel. Hermione expressed her appreciation of Lockhart's abilities during several meetings, and felt that she could ask the professor about black magic defense after school. But this time Hermione was not as obsessed with Lockhart as the original, because when she shared the content of Lockhart's novel with Lane told her that their adventures last year were no worse than Lockhart's adventures. At least 3 dogs were more dangerous in classification than vampires, not to mention the mysterious man. So Lockhart can be regarded as an adventurous senior to respect, but worship is not necessary at all. If you think about the honor of Hogwarts teacher, it's darker than Lockhart, but Lockhart makes his experience public. Without a real hammer, you must not say Lockhart is a liar. Otherwise Hermione's rebellious emotions will definitely arouse. Hermione thought for a while and admitted that she was somewhat influenced by the novel. In addition, Lockhart is really attractive, so he is a little fascinated by Lockhart. Now that I figured it out, I just regarded Lockhart as a very powerful professor. Time passed quickly, and it was September 1st. Mr. Lambert finally ended his retreat, got out of his house and drove Lane to King's Cross Station. Along the way, Mr. Lambert was in a state of excitement and he kept talking to Lane about the setting of the novel. As a result, I was too excited to stop the car in time when passing a traffic light. Unfortunately rear-end with the car in front. Although it was a small collision and no one was injured, it took a lot of time to deal with it. When the father and son hurried to the station in a luggage cart, they happened to meet the same late Harry and Weasleys. After saying hello, the Weasleys began to pass through the wall one by one, and Ryan said goodbye to his father. Watching Mr. Lambert walk out the door, Ryan heard a booming sound before turned around and Ryan saw Harry and Ron fall to the ground. 2 luggage carts turned over and the luggage on the car was scattered all over the place. There was a circle of people pointing at them, and Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to squeeze into the crowd and walk to them. What happened? Why are you so embarrassed? I don't know what happened. The passage seems to be blocked, Harry said to Ryan, clutching his ribs. Ryan walked over to the wall and reached out, and the wall was blocked. This should be the masterpiece of the house elf Dobby. Watching the big clock in the station approaching the departure time 1 minute and 1 second, Harry tried again to push hard against the wall with a trolley, but the wall remained motionless. It seems that because of the enthusiastic help of the house elf, Harry was successfully trapped in the train station and could not go to Hogwarts. Ryan and Ron are also trapped here as collateral damage. Ryan had to say that the house elf Dobby's rescue method is really unacceptable, But this is good news for Ryan, because it shows that the opportunity to earn a deviation point is coming. Ryan felt a lot of joy at the thought of here. Chapter 73, Successfully Returned to School. Finally, the hour hand of the big clock on the train station reached the departure time. This train looks like it can't catch up. It's over, Ron said blankly. The train is on. What if Mom and Dad can't come over to pick us up? Are you carrying mule money? Harry laughed dryly. The Dursleys haven't given me pocket money for 6 years. I'm fine, Ryan said. I still have more than £30 on me. Ron relaxed when he heard Ryan's answer, and then put his ear on the cold partition wall. There is no voice, he said nervously. What shall we do? I don't know how long it will take my parents to come back to find us. Because Harry's owl kept calling, it attracted too much attention. So Harry proposed to go to the car and wait for the Weasleys. Ron seemed to think of something because of the word car at this time, and said excitedly to Ryan and Harry, we can drive to Hogwarts. We are trapped, right? We must rush back to school, right? In real emergency situations, the little wizard can also use magic. Section 19 of the restriction regulations still has several provisions. Stop, Ryan waved to Ron. Don't forget that we are only 12 years old. Do you think it's really appropriate to drive a car across the entire UK without a car driver? I can't save 3 people in case of a floating spell. Harry shook his head after listening to Ryan's words, and he found Ron's method inappropriate. After all, even in the Mole world, driving must take a driving license after studying at a driving school. According to what he observed in Weasley's life, Mrs. Weasley could never have allowed Ron to fly around in his car. Harry didn't want to put his life in the hands of this novice driver. So what do you say? We can't go to Hogwarts now. Ron looked at Harry and did not support his point of view, so he said anxiously. We hurried out. I think my father hasn't left by this time. He can help us go to the Cauldron Bar, and when we get there, we should be able to find someone who can help us. Lane told Harry. They said, you are really a genius, worthy of the highest test score among us. Ron patted Ryan's shoulder, and then 3 people pushed the trolley to the parking lot quickly. Arrived at the parking lot and found that his father, Mr. Lambert, had not left. He was surprised to see his child and 2 other classmates pushing a trolley to him. Aren't you supposed to take the train to school? Why did you come back so quickly? Mr. Lambert asked, somewhat puzzled. Well, something went wrong at the entrance and we can't get in now. So hope you can send us to the Broken Cauldron Bar where we last shopped, and we will go back to school from there. After listening, Mr. Lambert asked the 3 of them to pack their luggage on his car. After that, he called another taxi and let them 3 sit in the taxi, and then told the taxi driver to follow him. After 10 minutes, they finally arrived at the Broken Cauldron. After saying goodbye to Mr. Lambert, Ryan and their baggage walked into the Cauldron Bar. Today's bar business is not so good. Few guests are drinking. The boss, Tom, was sitting behind the bar wiping his glass and was surprised when they came in. Children, today should be the day of school. How did you come here? It seems that something is wrong with the partition wall of platform 9 3/4, blocking us out, so we can only go here to see who can help us. Then you will sit here for a while, and I will send you a letter to your professor. After that, Tom took out a quill pen and wrote something on the parchment, and then passed the parchment through the flyway net. Ryan went to the counter and bought 3 bottles of pumpkin juice. Then he and Harry sat down at the table and waited for news while drinking 1 bottle each. As soon as I had finished drinking pumpkin juice, I saw a green flame in the fireplace of the Broken Cauldron. Professor McGonagall came out of the fireplace in a dark green robe, and he took a breath after seeing them. Thank goodness you are all right. The Ministry of Magic said there was a problem with the partition wall. I am really worried that you will hurt yourself by doing something stupid because you can't keep up with the Hogwarts Express. Fortunately, you know how to get help from the Cauldron Bar. Now the train is off. How do we get to school? Harry asked Professor McGonagall. Don't worry about the children, we are going to Flyway Network directly to Hogsmeade Station. Ryan, you haven't used the Flyway Network handle. It will be fine to see how I use it and follow along. Finally, Professor McGonagall threw a pinch of flying powder into the fire, and the flame turned green. She walked in and said Hogsmeade Station. Then it disappeared. You come first. Don't panic and don't move, just point to the place. There is no danger, Ron said to Ryan. Lene picked up a pinch of powder from the basin and threw it into the fire and dragged his luggage into the fireplace. Feeling as hot in the fireplace as by the fire, Lane read his destination, Hogsmeade Station. He felt like he was thrown into the washing machine, and the vortex of green flames made him feel a little dizzy. There was no way. Finally snapped, he fell on the marble floor with his luggage. The dizzy Ryan propped himself up with his arm, when Professor McGonagall came to him with his wand to clean up and remove the soot from his body. Harry and Ron, who arrived after, were also prepared by Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall asked them to leave their luggage here. Be assured that someone will help you to send your luggage to your dormitory later. After that, they took them to the school carriage. There was nothing in front of the carriage, but Ryan knew that it was Ekila's carriage, and only those who saw death could see them. Following a rough dirt road, the carriage passed through a magnificent cast-iron door. There are stone pillars on both sides of the road, and there are wild boars with wings at the top. Finally, after passing a long ramp, The carriage stopped at the gate of the castle. At this time, the system issued a reminder in Ryan's mind. The Harry Potter speeding incident across the UK changed and gained 6 offset points. This point is more than expected, probably because of a series of events after changing at any time. So many offset points were obtained. After getting off the bus, Professor McGonagall said to the 3 of them, "Okay, it's time to school. Because your classmates will arrive in the afternoon, the school is not ready. So I hope you can stay quiet in the common room until the school banquet before coming down. The password in the common room is to eat honeybirds. I will let people send you lunch." Chapter 74, Beginning of the New School Year. Ryan, after they said goodbye to Professor McGonagall, went down the stairs to the Gryffindor Tower together. A few minutes later, they came to the portrait of the Fat Lady. "Oh, you came so early. This is not normal." Fat Lady looked at the 3 of them and said, "Honeybird, honeybird." After a long time in the fireplace, he turned upside down on the carriage for a while. Ryan felt a little dizzy and didn't want to talk. It seemed that Harry and Ron thought the same way. The portrait of the Fat Lady unscrewed. The 3 of them climbed into the hole and threw themselves on the nearest sofa. After sitting for a while, Ryan was out of breath, and then saw that there was no one on the coffee table in front of him. Who placed a plate with Yorkshire pudding and roast beef, and roasted potatoes and pea seedlings. A layer of brown gravy poured on the beef and vegetables. There was also a jug of pumpkin juice and 3 cups beside the plate. It seems that if you are not punished for doing things, simple meals like Hogwarts are also very rich. They poured the gravy on the pudding and served it with beef. After all, they had been hungry all morning. After eating lunch, the tableware also disappeared, just as when eating in the auditorium. The house elves of Hogwarts are really excellent, serving every wizard without being discovered by the wizard. After sitting for a while, Ryan asked Harry and Ron, "Why can't we get over that wall? Is it because of a malfunction?" Harry replied, "Maybe. After all, the Hogwarts Express has been running for more than a century. Think about the damage of the subway gate at both ends of the sky for 3 days. Then it is normal for this entrance to occasionally break once. No, things in the magic world are not so easy to break. Especially the important partition wall is checked every year," Ron retorted, and then he turned to Ryan, "Thank you this time. Now I just thought, if I really drove my dad's car away, my mum would have killed me. Not to mention that if we actually drove, it's estimated that we were still sitting in a small car and basking in the sun." "No need to thank, I just occasionally think about others," Ryan said. "I'm going to take a nap. It's really tiring to trust this morning." After speaking, Ryan walked up the escalator to his room and took a nap. When he got up at 3 o'clock, he rinsed and put on his robe and went downstairs. Harry and Ron were playing crackling explosion cards. Harry shook his hand. These cards exploded, as if burning his eyebrows. Seeing Ryan walking downstairs, Harry seemed to suddenly think of something and said to Ryan, "Yes, Ryan, thank you for your letter and postcard for the holiday." After, Lane also joined their game. Relying on the assassin's heritage, Ryan's hand is very stable, and he can build a crackling explosion into a tall castle. It's a pity that Ron is not an opponent at all in the chess of the wizard, and he was hit by falling flowers. Finally, when all 3 felt a little tired, it was time for dinner. They packed themselves quickly, and then went downstairs to the auditorium to attend the opening ceremony. "We didn't come when we got to the auditorium, so Ryan and the 3 of them were waiting in the hall in front of the auditorium." A chatter came from the corridor after a while, and the students were all there. Ryan followed the crowd and sat down at Gryffindor's table. Just like last year, the ceiling where the sky can be seen is filled with candles, and the auditorium becomes a sea of black hats. The only difference is that this year Ryan is no longer a freshman at the door. Instead, he sits at the desk of his college like other students and waits for the branch of the freshmen. Lane just sat down. I heard a rush of footsteps in front of me, and then a figure sat across from Ryan. It turned out to be Hermione. There was a look of anxiety on his face. "What are you doing? I never saw you and Harry on the train. I thought you were all missing." "My father had a small car accident on the road this morning, but it was a little late when I arrived at the station. Then I didn't know what happened. There was a problem with the partition wall on the platform. They trapped me and Harry outside. We went to break. Kettlebell wrote a letter for help, and finally Professor McGonagall sent it to the school with the help of Fellow.com. After listening, Hermione patted her chest with her hand. "It's okay for a few of you. You don't know how worried I am when I find out that there are not a few of you in the car." Ryan still wanted to say something, but Dumbledore stood up and spoke, and he closed his mouth. The headmaster announced that the branch ceremony had begun. The door of the auditorium was pushed open, and the new students were trembling like a quail. "Sure enough, I didn't tell the freshman branch about the ritual of the Hogwarts ancestral prank. But looking at these freshmen, think about the 7th graders who have already graduated." Ryan discovered that the real power of the British magic world has always been at Hogwarts. Nothing else. At least most of the employees of the British Ministry of Magic graduated from here. There will be one more bureaucrat like Fudge, but since 1956, the principal of Hogwarts has been Dumbledore. It can be said that almost all the employees of the Ministry of Magic are students of Dumbledore. Lane was thinking about the enmity between the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts in the original book. and the singing of the branch hat brought him back to reality. I have to say that even after a year of brewing the branch hat, the singing voice is still so unpleasant. Next was the branch ceremony. Ginny Weasley was accidentally assigned to Gryffindor. In addition to this, there is the famous Harry Potter fan Colin Clive. Ryan felt that the two of them should form a Harry Potter fan club together, and there should be many common languages. After the regular headmaster's speech, as brief as last year, a sumptuous dinner began. The collision of laughter and knives and forks echoed in the auditorium. When the last piece of dessert disappeared, Dumbledore told everyone that they should go back to bed. Hermione finally found the opportunity to ask Ryan how to get to school in the end. After listening to Ryan's account, Hermione said to Ryan, "Fortunately, you didn't listen to Ron's bad idea. Otherwise, today you will definitely deduct a lot of points from the academy. Maybe you will be dismissed." After returning to the common room, the students really showed interest in Ryan's 3 unusual ways of coming to school. Ron seemed to enjoy this highly anticipated feeling, constantly describing the situation to those willing to listen to him. Ryan shrugged after seeing this scene and went upstairs to her dormitory after saying goodnight to Hermione. Ryan practiced the spell for a while before the roommates had returned to the dorm. "Then I went to the bathroom to wash and go to bed." The first day of the thrilling school day. Chapter 75, First Combat Practice. At 6:15 the next morning, Ryan got up early to wash and came to the common room. Hermione was already waiting for him with her school bag on her back. Because Hermione had previously agreed with Ryan to learn something about combat from him, this idea was born out of the protection of her parents when Miss Granger discovered that the magic world was not friendly to Muzz during the summer vacation. The two came to an empty classroom on the second floor. Ryan closed the door and began to speak. "Since you want to learn how to fight, then I can share all my experiences with you." Hermione saw Ryan finished and took out a book. It is the standard textbook Dark Power, Self-Defense Guide of the Black Magic Defense Class and an extracurricular book Self-Defense Curse Collection. Since we want to learn, I think we should start with the most basic and simplest and most orthodox. Although these spells may be simple to release, single use and general effect, but at least can guarantee the safety of learning. Hermione nodded in agreement. Ryan opened the book, then pointed to one of the pages and said, "I think we should learn from this. Disarming Curse, one of the most basic but effective spells. Of course, this thing should be for African wizards. It's useless because they cast their spells empty-handed. But at least in the UK, it's very useful." Ryan finished handing the book to Hermione. After receiving the book, Hermione read it carefully several times, and then waved her wand in the air, her lips wriggling. After a while, she stopped the motion in her hand and said to Ryan, "I think the theoretical knowledge I have learned is almost the same. We should practice it because the curse must not be learned just by reading." "Of course, I think so," Ryan said and pulled out his wand. He had to admire Hermione's cleverness, because at that time he learned this spell 20% more time than Hermione. When the two people were about 10 steps apart, Ryan raised his wand and said, "I count to 3, and then we start together. 1, 2, 3, accept your weapon." As soon as Ryan's voice fell, Hermione pronounced the spell. The spell had a good head, and a red beam of light flew from the head of Hermione's wand and hit Ryan. However, because it was the first time to use it, Hermione had a problem with the magic release. This spell just made Ryan's hair comb up, and Ryan's counterattack easily let Hermione's wand spin and fly out. "Why doesn't my spell work?" Hermione asked strangely. This is the problem of self-study only by looking at textbooks. There are only spells and principles in the textbooks. It is used in conjunction with the teacher's classroom teaching. How to cast spells depends on the teacher's demonstration. Fortunately, the Self-Defense Curse Collection contains the key point. After finishing, Ryan showed Hermione one of the disarming spells in the Self-Defense Curse Collection. Hermione glanced and discovered her problem. It turns out that the sound of the letter P needs to be accented. After reading, Hermione closed the book and continued training. Under the circumstances of finding the right method, her magic progressed quickly, and it took a short while to fly Ryan's blow. "I think I have mastered this magic. Can I learn the next one?" Hermione looked a little proud and said to Ryan, "Have you really mastered it? Then let's really test it. After all, you have to know that in real combat, it is impossible for two people to stand still and shoot each other with a spell. You can use it without a spell at your level now. Beat you? I don't believe it. After all, you haven't studied these spells for a long time. Even if the level is higher than mine, it won't be too high." After the two people were 10 steps away from each other to start a new round of practice, Hermione fired a spell on Ryan, but they were either dodged by Ryan or blocked by the desk in the classroom. Finally Ryan jumped over several tables, dodged the spell and approached Hermione, then pointed her at her wand. "When did you learn these? It looks a bit like Parker. But seriously, this skill should have some role in combat." "How do you know this?" "I remember that this thing is only popular in France, and basically no one in the UK will know this. I just learned it by chance from a sailor traveling around." Ryan asked. "Because I have a French relative. He came to our house last time and told me that my distant cousin broke his leg because of participating in this sport." "Sure enough, extreme sports are risky, so you still have to be cautious." Ryan continued, "So I said you haven't mastered this magic at all, or, To be precise, you haven't mastered how this magic should be used in combat. And as a combat magic, this is the core. It is indeed. Hermione admitted this. But you should have practiced this sport for several years. I think it is difficult for me to be as flexible as you. It's not necessary to be the same as me, but it's always good to exercise to enhance athletic ability. Think about the many magic spells in the magic world that are difficult to block. It is necessary to aim at the front so you can flash these spells. Even the most terrifying life spell, as long as it can't hit you, of course you can't kill you. After that, Ryan gave Hermione the way to exercise in some assassin heritage, and finally said to her, although it is a simple matter to say that the magic world treats common diseases, it is better to get as few diseases as possible. Madame Pomfrey's potion is really bad in taste, so it's not a bad thing to exercise to strengthen your body. Hermione nodded her heart. She had drunk Madame Pomfrey's potion because of a cold last winter, and the taste could be said to be terrible, and the outside ears kept steaming out. In the time after, Ryan pulled out a few small from his pocket and directed them to move up and down with a floating spell. Let Hermione use these as moving targets to practice her disarming spell. Soon, the time came to 7:15. The two packed up the things in the classroom and went to the auditorium for breakfast. On the way, Hermione asked Ryan, when is our next practice time? I think this requires weekly practice to be effective, otherwise it will be easy to forget. Then simply Saturday or Sunday, when we'll be free, when you will notify each other. Ryan said after thinking about it. After all, only the holidays will have a lot of time for practice, like today the practice time before breakfast is too tight. Then they discussed some tips about the use of the disarming spell, and what their opponents should do when casting the spell or attacking the moving target. Walk to the hall in front of the hall, and they stopped discussing. Go to Gryffindor's long table for breakfast.